It begins in 1861. I have just inherited the throne of the Netherlands. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 851, Junker nobles can no longer sit still. The Netherlands is trying to win the support of its allies. Once other countries support British diplomatic actions, sanctions will be imposed. Berlin, which is busy dealing with Bismarck, who is accused of being pro-Jewish, is troubled by the words of the intelligence chief Bart. A few days ago, His Majesty William IV of the Netherlands received the visiting King Oscar II of Sweden at the Royal Palace of the Netherlands on Friday. One of the topics expected to be discussed is the role of the Second French Empire in the Anglo-Dutch conflict. Oscar II previously spoke at the Swedish Parliament in Stockholm, Sweden, urging the Second French Empire not to provide support for the defense of British diplomacy and military, and asked Paris to test London, asking Britain to stop suppressing the Netherlands and trust the development of relations between the Netherlands and Sweden's allies, and asking Britain not to harm the interests of Sweden and the Netherlands in the Far East in America. In this regard, Campbell, director of the Netherlands National Security Council and coordinator of Atlantic Affairs, pointed out when asked in Melbourne that the British action to suppress the Netherlands has impacted the relationship between the Netherlands and Sweden and the United Kingdom. This will distract Britain's attention. Britain should focus on developing economic and diplomatic friendly relations. Britain's current approach is very dangerous, and this is an unnecessary and unwanted potential blow to their international relations. The German intelligence chief continued, at present, the coordination of the positions between Oscar II and William IV of Sweden is still in the initial stage. Because they have just visited, there is currently no broad consensus on any specific measures, and it is not clear what measures Melbourne and Stockholm intend to take to deal with Britain. However, according to the information we have, the Netherlands is trying to win over and win the support of close allies. Once countries such as France and Belgium provide military support to Britain in the conflict between the Netherlands and Britain, sanctions will be imposed on these countries. Bismarck, is the news reliable? Lieutenant General Bart nodded hurriedly, and then said, "We have a Swedish national official lurking in Sweden who is negotiating with the Netherlands. According to the information revealed to us, they have only seen very little intelligence to support the claim that these pro-British countries are considering continuing to provide military and diplomatic support to Britain." However, the official also revealed that the Netherlands is comprehensively providing detailed intelligence to the Netherlands' allies and collecting information from various countries. Bismarck exhaled, and then thought to himself, according to recent information collected from officials and other sources related to the Netherlands intends to seek support from more other countries, especially important allies of the Netherlands, such as Sweden, Denmark, Greece, South American allies, the Kingdom of Siam, the Russian Empire and the United States, to coordinate support for any potential sanctions against Britain. Despite this, the Kingdom of the Netherlands has not yet imposed sanctions on other countries close to Britain, nor has it publicly provided evidence or accused these countries, and these countries have also expressed their unwillingness to defend the Netherlands, and some countries have even expressed their unwillingness to take sides and lean towards neutrality. Bismarck is becoming more and more cautious about William IV of the Netherlands. According to multiple sources he knows, Dutch officials are working with Britain's core allies, who strongly supported Britain's strong position at the beginning of the conflict in the Strait of Malacca, to lay the foundation for possible actions against other countries. Some people pointed out that the Netherlands hopes to first propose the idea of coordinated sanctions. If it is found that the countries that support Britain militarily support Britain and threaten them, which is unfavorable to the Netherlands and its allies, they will then take specific measures to determine what actions to take. The intelligence chief said, "The Netherlands and its allies have said in recent weeks that Italy and Portugal are considering providing weapons to Britain, and warned Portugal and Italy not to do so." When Dutch Foreign Minister Joseph Beit visited South America last week, he mentioned that the Netherlands had publicly warned countries at the annual summit organized by the International Court of Justice in The Hague that if they provided military support to Britain to fight against the Netherlands would not hesitate to impose sanctions on countries and individuals who supported Britain to harm the Netherlands. At the same time, they were listed as enemies by the Netherlands. As the lead agency for the Netherlands to implement sanctions, the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs declined to comment on the news. However, People familiar with the matter revealed that the initial measures taken by the Linden government to counter the support of various countries for Britain include stopping the sale of the Netherlands' most advanced weapons to these countries, and the Netherlands will prohibit the sale of advanced technology products to these countries by the technology of advanced Dutch companies. However, people familiar with the matter revealed that the Linden government is currently conducting informal diplomatic contacts with countries suspected of supporting Britain. Multiple sources of information said that Dutch officials are working with core allies who are concerned about and wary of Britain to coordinate their positions on Britain. Obviously, the Netherlands is trying to set rules for a consistent external position on the issue of Britain. Barth was the head of intelligence for the German Empire government and one of Bismarck's most trusted people for many years. The reason why he was able to stay in this position for 15 years was because of the strong support of the person in front of him. He hesitated to speak. Bismarck saw it and asked unhappily, "Look at your look. If you have something to say, just say it." Barth showed embarrassment, and then said, "Prime Minister, the current domestic public opinion is not favorable to you." Bismarck asked without changing his expression, "At present, the country is full of various versions of your relationship with the Jews, and many of them are even full of scripted descriptions. For example, your ex-wife and former female partner, etc., are all said to be related to the Jews. Even your current wife Joanna has been pointed out that there are Jewish people around her in many of her daily activities. In short, you have begun to be accused of being too close to the Jews." He said with some vigilance and worry, "At present, ordinary people in our country have expressed dissatisfaction, and some people in the Junker nobles who have always supported you have begun to express concerns. I am afraid that if this continues, His Majesty the royal family will have subtle changes in this regard." Bismarck's heart tightened. It must be said that this attack on him was too fierce. He had been arranging for Germany to intervene in the Anglo-Dutch conflict, and then he, who was the fisherman, was targeted. Just as the Russian Empire and the Second French Empire expressed their wish to mediate the Anglo-Dutch conflict, attacks against us began. Have you found out where the source came from? Bismarck has always been used to being strong, but this time he was attacked directly from within the German Empire, from within the so-called Bismarck's headquarters. This was an unprecedented provocation, and he could not tolerate this. Chapter 852, Which international student is the best? The Privy Council, Melbourne, Australian Continent, Netherlands, December 15, 1880. From 1862 to 1879, the Dutch white population increased more than 3 times from less than 7 million to 245. The birth rate surged, and a large number of immigrants promoted the population growth of our country. The white population from South America is also one of the main reasons for the Dutch population surge. At present, our Dutch government has formulated a population policy, which is to absorb the world's elite talents to the Netherlands, replenish nutrients for the Netherlands, and reduce the future potential of various countries. This is the main policy. Since Your Majesty inherited the throne in 1861, nearly 20 years have passed, and more than 3 million immigrants have been absorbed from all over the world. At the same time, these 3 million immigrants have married and had children, and the population has increased by 2.5 times to more than 7.5 million. The local population has also rushed to 17.5 million at this growth rate. If it were not for the natural disappearance of the population due to birth, aging, illness and death, it would have grown even more. At present, the Western countries with a larger population than ours are only Tsarist Russia, Germany, Britain, the divided United States and France. Only Austria-Hungary has more than us. The other Ottoman Empire and Spain are on par with us. In the Privy Council of the Netherlands, David Blank, the Minister of the Interior of the Netherlands, made his report in a clear and coherent manner. The weekly Privy Council meeting will be a meeting of the giants of the Dutch political arena. While His Majesty William IV will attend, the Dutch Prime Minister Theo van Linden, the Chief Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister Jules Darnedang, the Minister of Foreign Affairs Joseph Beit, the Minister of the Interior David Blank, the Minister of Defense Fox, the Minister of Industry Joseph Lunke, the Minister of Transportation Byers, the Minister of Education Maury Philip, the Minister of Energy Hester and other cabinet members will also attend. At the same time, Chief Justice Robert Cook, the President of the Privy Council and the Speaker of the House of Commons Baron Caslin, the Lord Chancellor and the Speaker of the House of Lords Marcus Andrew Smith, the director of the National Security Council of the Netherlands and the coordinator of Atlantic Affairs Cantor, and the director of the National Financial Committee of the Netherlands SACM will all be present. The latter Cantor and SACM were requested by William IV to participate in the past 2 years. These are the results of William IV's reform of the power structure reorganization of the Dutch Privy Council. Both of them were William IV's think tanks and important forces in the hands of the royal family. The Dutch National Security Council, represented by Cantor, was the royal family's tentacles to interfere with the Dutch military, while the Dutch Financial Committee was the royal family's means of controlling the lifeblood of the Dutch Financial Committee. In particular, the Dutch Federal Reserve, established by William IV, modeled after the later American Federal Reserve, can be said to have steadily entered the fast lane of Dutch financial hegemony. Mastering it undoubtedly made it possible for the royal family to intervene in global finance, and then rose to various political forces in their hands. William IV did not want the royal family composed of his descendants to become auspicious words in the future, but only good-looking but useless. After all, the Rothschild family is so glorious now. Who can imagine that in the second half of the 20th century, after the First and Second World Wars destroyed the foundation and assets of Europe, it would become a family that can only maintain a first-class family with difficulty, and be surpassed by the major American consortium families that he used to look down on. So in order to prevent trouble before it happens, he made some preparations, but he did not make a fuss. David Blank continued to sit and report. At the request of Your Majesty, we have done some tracking. Currently, the number of Jews in the Kingdom of the Netherlands has increased sevenfold from 50,000 in 1861 to 400,000. The 0.833 in 1861, 6 million, has increased to 1.63%, almost doubling. Jews immigrated to the Netherlands and Europe in large numbers from the East, especially during the internal wars in the United German Confederation initiated by Prussia, and then followed us to migrate to the Australian continent. The war between France and Germany, the Civil War in France, and the Jews in Poland could not stand the oppression of the Russian Empire. William IV interrupted and asked, "Do Jews still live the same as in Europe?" David Blank shook his head and said, "No, most Jews now avoid the traditional Jewish lifestyle and accept modern secular religion. Therefore, there are a lot of Jews in middle schools, universities and specialized professions in the Netherlands." William IV, according to what you said, Jews are so studious, don't they account for a large proportion of students? Would it cause the students from my motherland and my previous life to study in a major overseas education country, and then find that this classroom is almost dominated by students from my motherland, and even people joke that this is just a summer camp classroom in China, except that the teachers in the classroom have been replaced by foreigners. Therefore, William IV, who always cares about the Jews, naturally does not want the Jews to be the only ones in his country, and the Dutch in his country to become the target of oppression by the smart Jews. That's why he asked this question. Fortunately, David Blank's answer made him feel relieved. Currently, Jews account for about 2% of the number of university students in our country, which is higher than the population. However, due to the good national education, the academic qualifications are high. Your Majesty has begun to promote 12-year compulsory education in the past few years, so the proportion of universities has increased year by year, and the Jews are not outstanding. The most surprising thing is that in our country, in addition to our Dutch, there is actually a foreign student team that stands out from the crowd to compete with the Jews. David Blank saw His Majesty's inquiring eyes, and the others were also full of curiosity. He smiled bitterly and said, "This team is a team of international students from foreign countries." International student team. When the faces of others changed drastically, William IV's mind lit up. He had guessed where this team came from. Even the Minister of Industry Joseph Lunke couldn't help but be dissatisfied and urged David Blank to announce the answer. Sure enough, David Blank said, "It is a team of international students from the Qing dynasty." Qing dynasty. Everyone was surprised to hear this answer. Even Joseph Lunke said in disbelief, "The people from the Qing dynasty? They are not that poor." It is not an exaggeration to say that they are peasants. They have become outstanding talents in our educational institutions. Joseph Lunke stared at the Minister of Education, Marie Philip, and asked doubtfully, "Is there something wrong with our education system?" Marie Philip said unhappily, "If there is a problem with you, our Ministry of Education will not." Seeing that everyone except His Majesty's beloved was looking at him, he seemed to be unable to withstand the pressure and explained, "The students from the Qing dynasty are all selected by their government to study here. It is not an exaggeration to say that they are elites selected from thousands of people. Therefore, although they lack a lot of our students in terms of basic knowledge, they have good perseverance, and they are hardworking, diligent and motivated, which is rare. When William Ivey heard this, a warm feeling surged in his heart, and he smiled and said, "Well, since it is not the Jews who stand out from the crowd, then we can breathe a sigh of relief. I don't want the scene that happened in Europe to happen in the Netherlands." At this point, William Ivey said, "This week's Privy Council meeting has expressed the intention to formulate a plan to absorb Jewish capital into the Netherlands and then use the Jews to disrupt Germany. Let's start the discussion now." Chapter 853, Britain and Germany must become enemies. Edmund Rothschild, the third-generation head of the Rothschild family, who now lives in Paris, showed a very helpless expression on his face. Mr. Edmund, Our Majesty is currently asking your family to fully support our actions against Bismarck, so please stand up and be more biased towards Bismarck. The speaker was Jefferson Bryn, the ambassador of the Dutch embassy in Paris. He has been in this position for 16 years and can be said to have witnessed the power changes between the Netherlands and the Second French Empire. When he first came to Paris, he had to look up to the head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Second French Empire every time he met with him, but since the rise of the Netherlands, especially after the split of France in 1870, the status of the two countries has reversed, and the Netherlands has become a guest of honor. With a strong backer, those who represent the Netherlands when they go out will naturally follow the tone and need to be tougher. Just yesterday, he was summoned by the French foreign minister. He expressed the Dutch attitude in a tough way, which made the other party afraid to act rashly. Today, he came here again to ask for an audience with Edmund Rothschild, the financial emperor of France. Although his tone was respectful, he also had the necessary airs, especially since he came with a mission. Although Edmund was dissatisfied, he still did not directly refute the other party. Especially as the Rothschild family's most supportive of the Jewish world, he can be said to have developed a certain dependence on the Netherlands. The support that William Ivey of the Netherlands promised to give to the Jewish restoration in recent years has become more and more obvious. If he had not rejected William Ivey's proposal to let the Jews restore the Bahrain Islands in the Persian Gulf in the Middle East, it is hard to say that the successful restoration of the Jewish state has been more than 10 years now. There is a little regret in his heart, but thinking about the development of the Jews in the world over the past 10 years, especially in the Netherlands, Edmund Rothschild is happy again. After all, the geographical location of the Bahrain Islands is too special. To the south are the Dutch overseas territories of Qatar, acquired from Germany in 1870, the United Arab Emirates, and East Oman. To the west of the Bahrain Peninsula are the Kingdom of Najaz and the Kingdom of Hanjaz on the Arabian Peninsula. To the northwest is a large land territory controlled by the Ottoman Empire. At the northernmost end of the Persian Gulf in the north is Kuwait, controlled by the United Kingdom. To the east and northeast, across the Persian Gulf, is the Persian Empire. The most important reason for his refusal is that the Bahrain Islands are too small, less than 800 square kilometers, and according to food planting, they can't even feed 500,000 people. And now the world's Jews far exceed this data. So in Bahrain, he doesn't think the development potential of this future Jewish country will be great. On the contrary, with William Ivey like him, the Jews have opened up the Dutch domestic market, and the Jews have also obtained the right to reside in the Netherlands. There are currently 400,000 people in the Netherlands, accounting for 1/10 of the total number of Jews in the world. Second only to the German Empire and the Russian Empire, and before France and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Data alone cannot explain much. Due to their special circumstances and their thriving careers, Jews have become a bastion of the bourgeoisie in the Netherlands. They are the main sponsors and activists of educational, cultural and artistic charities. As the most influential foreign minority, they are eager to establish an equal status and become the backbone of liberal political and social movements. As a group that has abandoned its own culture to varying degrees, Jews in the Netherlands are particularly fascinated by every innovative modern thing in the cultural field. Their experience is believed to be a preview of the future wave of Jewish immigration to the Netherlands. What Edmund didn't know was that Jews were only one of the main forces of the European avant-garde before 1900. It was the Dutch Jews who laid the foundation for the status of the three major Dutch cities, including Sydney, Melbourne and Amsterdam, in the future world's modern cultural field. Ambassador Jefferson Breen said at this time, Mr. Edmund may have some concerns, right? At the age of 72, he is the oldest ambassador in the world. He has devoted his life to the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He has won the trust of 3 consecutive Dutch kings, William II, William II and the current King William IV of the Netherlands. Before coming to France, he had served as the Dutch ambassador to the United States. He can be said to be the oldest member of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. As an experienced person, he naturally saw Edmund's concerns. Seeing Edmund pretending to be calm, Jefferson Breen said, "At present, the German Empire can only occupy Western Europe, and its position is extremely embarrassing. I believe Mr. Edmund can guess that Bismarck is actually preparing to sit back and watch the fight, and wants to take advantage of the opportunity to gain benefits." Edmund looked at Ambassador Jeff Breen in surprise and asked, "Really?" Jefferson Breen nodded, but secretly cursed him for pretending. As the richest man in the French Empire, even the Emperor Napoleon III of the Second French Empire and the Presidentiere of the Third French Republic in the South did not dare to offend him. It can be said that Edmund took advantage of the contradiction between the two and took care of both ends, allowing the Rothschild family to expand their business in the French Empire, not to mention the financial influence. He didn't believe that such a person didn't know that Germany and Austria-Hungary had asked Britain and the Netherlands for the territory of Kalimantan Island some time ago. But he did not say it out loud, saying, "Of course, Bismarck took advantage of the Anglo-Dutch conflict years ago to demand part of the Dutch and British territories on Kalimantan Island, but unfortunately it was shelved by the two countries in the end. But I never thought that Bismarck himself would get involved in a close relationship with the Jews, causing the Junker nobles and the Germans to doubt his loyalty." I said, "Mr. Edmund, could this be a British plot? After all, you should know that the British are very close to the Rothschild family, which controls the lifeline of British finance. If Bismarck's unusual relationship with the Jews is revealed, do you think the two people in Buckingham Palace and number 10 Downing Street will still sleep well? I think they definitely can't sleep." This is Jefferson Breen's self-answered answer. Edmund Rothschild agreed in his heart. No country is willing to let others catch its weakest point. What's more, Britain and Germany seem to have a peaceful relationship in recent years, but that is when they have not torn their faces apart. Jefferson Breen, Bismarck's strength and iron-bloodedness are well known in the European world. If you want the other party to give up any piece of fat, you need to exchange it with lean meat. What's more, Bismarck is famous for implementing many foreign actions with plans in succeeding. If Bismarck's relationship with the Jews is really like this, then the Jews in various countries will be the source of danger. It is very likely that the Jews will instantly become Bismarck's tools. At that time, all countries will become frightened birds, and the Jews will become rats crossing the street that everyone in the world will shout and beat. Edmund Rothschild looked at Jefferson Breen seriously with a complicated look, and then asked, "It seems that the living environment of the Jews is terrible. I wonder what the Netherlands needs our Rothschild family to do." Jefferson Breen, "The Jews can continue to be ambiguous with Bismarck, but the dirty water can be thrown on the British government. Let Germany and Britain attack each other, and our goal is to prevent Britain and Germany from getting close." Chapter 854, Culture Prospers the Nation. 1880, the last Privy Council meeting of the year was being held at the Royal Palace of the Netherlands. Cabinet members including Dutch Prime Minister Theo van Linden, Chief Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister Jules Darnedang, Foreign Minister Joseph Beit, Interior Minister David Blank, Defense Minister Fox, Industry Minister Joseph Lunke, Transport Minister Byers, Education and Culture Minister Maury Philip, Energy Minister Hester, etc. will attend. Chief Justice Robert Cook, Privy Council President and Speaker of the House of Commons Baron Caslin, Lord Chancellor and Speaker of the House of Lords Marcus Andrew Smith, Director of the Netherlands National Security Council and Atlantic Affairs Coordinator Cantor, and Director of the Netherlands National Finance Council SAC will all be present. William IV sat at the top, and next to him sat William IV's eldest son, Prince Albert, Prince of Australia and Crown Prince of the Netherlands. This was the first time that William IV allowed Prince Albert to attend a Privy Council meeting, which also meant that his status as the Crown Prince and the Crown Prince, who officially participated in the governance of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, was recognized. The dialogue between the monarch and his ministers was in progress. William IV was sitting at the head of the table, listening to everyone waiting for his questions with dignity. William IV was full of pride. In the 23 years since he traveled through time in 1857, he had turned the Kingdom of the Netherlands, a half-dead second-rate country, into a powerful country that is now on par with Britain. It can be said that it was not much better than when Queen Victoria ruled Britain in 1837 and then dominated the world in the following decades. Of course, if it were not for the rise of the Netherlands at sea, Britain would have been strong until the early 20th century, when it was dragged into World War I and World War II by Germany. Because of the consumption of comprehensive strength, the rise of the United States and Japan, and the colonies that broke away from rule, it left the position of the world's strongest country. However, due to his arrival, Queen Victoria's Britain only maintained its hegemony for 40 years. Coupled with the power of Britain before Queen Victoria, it can be said that the Netherlands has put an end to Britain's future path of continuing to rely on colonies, and the world tour opened the door to allow British industrial products to reshape the world pattern. The arrival of the Netherlands put Britain into the predicament before World War I more than 30 years ahead of schedule. But that was Germany. Now it is the Netherlands, which is even stronger than Britain. After all, the Netherlands has an army that is not inferior to Germany, and it also has a surface combat force that is almost on par with Britain. At the same time, its underwater submarine combat force can even beat Britain. In addition, the Netherlands has relied on the continuous emergence of innovative and world-leading industrial advanced technology. The total GDP of the Netherlands has surpassed Britain 2 years ago, 1,878, and become the world's largest economy. And unlike Britain, the Netherlands has turned waste into treasure and vigorously developed the labor force of African blacks and the indigenous labor of Far East Australia and the Dutch East Indies, later Indonesia. With nearly 40 million of these indigenous and black people, the Netherlands has abundant labor force, and its industrial strength is more optimistic than that of Britain, which is favored by economic experts from various countries. After all, Britain just treated the colonial population as pigs and sold them at will, while the Netherlands is said to have begun to provide these blacks and indigenous people with primary education that everyone needs, and can consider secondary education, and higher education, college education, on a merit basis. Therefore, the black and indigenous labor force in the Netherlands is actually highly qualified, which is a great help to the heavy industry and manufacturing industry of the Netherlands. Together with the 24.5 million white people in the Netherlands and other ethnic populations around the world, the total population of the Netherlands under his rule is about 70 million. This is second only to the population of the Qing dynasty and the United Kingdom, and is above the German Empire. Only the Russian Empire can be compared with it. Moreover, William IV did not implement the colonial system in the Netherlands long ago, and even went a step further than the overseas territorial system of France, directly implementing the localized assimilation system. All overseas territories are Dutch territory. After more than 10 or 20 years of development, the implemented assimilation system has been greatly recognized in the local area. Now in the Dutch-ruled areas, Dutch has become the official language. Even in more remote places, Dutch has become the second language, and it is very common. This was mentioned in the report of David Blank, the Minister of the Interior, just now. Thinking of this, William IV's eyes fell on the Minister of Education and Culture, Marie-Philippe. The latter also noticed that William IV's eyes fell on him, and he straightened his body. His Majesty asked, "I wonder how the cultural promotion of the Ministry of Education and Culture is going recently." Marie-Philippe, as the former kingmaker of the Kingdom of Belgium, has produced 3 Belgian prime ministers under him. The last one is Jules Darnedang, the Deputy Prime Minister of the Cabinet and the President of the Senate, who is also attending the Privy Council meeting. No one will underestimate a person who can assist 3 candidates to be successfully elected as Prime Minister. This is more difficult than being successfully elected as Prime Minister for 1 term. Therefore, Marie-Philippe's status in the Netherlands is very special. In the Dutch political arena, many people have of him and are eager to try. The reason why the Socialist Party is what it is today is not only because of the ability and appeal of Jules Darnedang and Joseph Beit, the 2 former prime ministers and speakers of Belgium, but also because Marie-Philippe's attraction to ambitious people has to be said to be one of the major motivations. After all, being a socialist can get the closest to him. Even get Marie-Philippe's choice to be the next person to push for the throne? No one can say that he might be the lucky one in the next moment. So when William IV saw his eyes on Marie-Philippe, even Prime Minister Linden of the Cabinet Government and Deputy Prime Minister and Senate President Jules Darnedang, the Chief Justice Robert Cook of the Royalist faction, the President of the Privy Council and Speaker of the House of Commons Baron Castlin, the Lord Chancellor and Speaker of the House of Lords Marcus Andrew Smith, The director of the Netherlands National Security Council and Atlantic Affairs Coordinator Cantor, and the director of the Netherlands National Finance Committee SAC, all calmed down. Obviously, Marie-Philippe meant that they should pay enough attention to this. Seeing this, William IV smiled in his heart and thought that the other party was powerful. Marie-Philippe seemed to have already prepared it in his mind. He paused for a moment, then replied calmly and with a hint of respect, "Your Majesty, our Ministry of Education is currently promoting a lot of education at all levels to love the Netherlands and protect the dignity of the Netherlands. The goal is to make students at all levels deeply ingrain their love for the Netherlands. At the same time, we are promoting a lot of cultural talents in the Ministry of Culture." William IV asked curiously, "What are the specific measures?" Marie-Philippe, "Music, philosophy, law, medicine, literature, politics, etc. We have already linked up with each other in the Ministry of Education and Culture, not only in schools, but also in society, at home and abroad. We have created our prosperous structure." Chapter 855, Hunting the Jews. At the meeting of the Dutch Privy Council, William IV asked the Minister of Education and Culture, Marie-Philippe, how to expand cultural dissemination. Marie-Philippe replied that they had various measures, saying that they were fully implemented in music, philosophy, law, medicine, literature, politics, etc. In music, we have discovered many Jewish talents, including Mahler, Schoenberg, Korngold, composers, Guido Adler, music family, Solomon Selzer, liturgical musician, Ed Hanslick, music critic, and Johnson Joachim, violinist. In philosophy, we have discovered Jewish talents such as Theodor Kompes, Ludwig Wittgenstein, and former members of the Austro-Hungarian Vienna School Group, Frank Hahn, and Nuala. In law, we have discovered Jewish talents such as J. Glaser, J. Unger, legal expert, E. Steinbach, J. Offner, social legislator, A. Loeffler, and S. Tuchel, criminal expert. In medicine, we have discovered Jewish talents such as Zuckerman, anatomist, Schenk, spare tire expert, Steinach, physiologist, Gruber, hygiene expert, Landsteiner, hematologist, von Basch, pathologist, Pick, pharmacologist, Binepic, neuropathologist, Karlups, neuropathologist, Freud and Adler, psychiatrists, Klein, ophthalmologist, Kasovitz, pediatrician, Mendel, surgeon, Holbein, gynecologist, Newberg, medical historian. In literature, Jewish contributions include A. Schnitzler, J. Roth, M. Zweig, R. Bill Hoffman, M. Hertzfeld, writer, M. Seth, M. Benedict, T. Herzl, F. Austerlitz, editor and journalist, K. Krauss, literary critic. In terms of politics, the Jewish talents in the Netherlands currently include Anne Birnbaum, Jewish autologist, T. Herzer, Zionist, Eugenie Schwartzbach, education reformer, and Josephine Witte-Musta, enlightened mistress of Sharon. From Marie-Philippe's mouth, vivid names were spit out one after another, and each time the Jews were put in front. Obviously, it was because the Jews have received international attention recently, so a detailed analysis of the Jews in the Ministry of Culture and Education was arranged. Everyone, including William IV, couldn't help but sigh that Marie-Philippe is worthy of being a political kingmaker who understands people's hearts. His work style and narrative procedures are beyond the reach of everyone. From the small to the big, you can know how great Marie-Philippe's ability to mix in the political arena is. Marie-Philippe finally said, "Jews currently have inseparable ties all over the world, but only if we grasp the lifeline of the Jews, then we will grasp the power of the Jews." In Sydney, the outspoken Rabbi Moritz Goodman recently presided over a synagogue, which has received strong support from the Dutch religious community. Sydney also has a gathering of Jews from all over the Netherlands, especially Sephardic Jews and Hasidim. These people are also considered Jews. Many of them tend to think that they are more Jewish. Mahler's conversion to Catholicism was an accident. Freud resisted all religions. Even this guy publicly said, "I am very happy and proud to know that I am a Jew, although I have a very negative attitude towards any religion." Marie-Philippe said in a casual way, "But don't think that Jews are so noble and noble. There are indeed many contradictions among them. People should not forget that Jews are neither the only immigrant group in the Netherlands nor the largest number of foreign immigrants. The Netherlands has accepted more Swedes and Danes, Germans, Hungarians, Slavs, and Latin Americans. However, compared with Jews, many of these latter are at the bottom of the Dutch white social hierarchy, second only to blacks and indigenous people. As for the emergence of anti-Semitism in many places in Europe, We should not ignore the general xenophobia implied by anti-Semitism in a narrow sense, especially if these happen in Europe. Can we use this to attract more European Jewish immigrants to come here? Of course, we can also create the influence of the Jewish people's own prejudice. The Jews who were North-Southernized in Europe are different from the Jews who were Americanized. The former often look down on the Jews from America and Northern Europe. Even within Germany, the Jews in Frankfurt look down on the Jews in Berlin, the Jews in Berlin in Germany look down on the Jews in Vienna in Austria-Hungary, and the Jews in Vienna look down on the Jews in Warsaw, the capital of the former Kingdom of Poland under the rule of the Russian Empire. However, the Jews who are the most despicable are the Jews in Galicia. William IV, that's right. There has never been true equality in the world. If there's, it's just because it exists in words. So, when Bismarck is facing a tangle with the Jews, it's actually very easy for us to add fuel to the fire. Everyone present is smart, and naturally understands that William IV is preparing to continue to add fuel to the fire, so that Bismarck can't quickly get out of the unfavorable public opinion of the German Empire. Naturally, there is no objection to this. On January 10, 1881, the Dutch Jewish Rabbi Goodman met with William IV in Melbourne. When the two were asked at a public press conference what they thought about the public opinion within the German Empire opposing Bismarck's rapprochement with the Jews, Rabbi Goodman was so ambiguous about his views that when a Catholic female reporter from the Lion Times in the Third French Republic asked Rabbi Goodman to read her anti-Semitic pamphlet, Goodman replied in a psychoanalytic style, "Christianity also finds itself with an unsatisfactory duality." When William IV was asked this sharp question, he replied calmly, "Christians kneel before the portrait of a Jewish man, but are uneasy before the portrait of a Jewish woman, because his apostles, festivals and psalms all come from Judaism." The existence of anti-Semitism has enabled many of them to eliminate this contradiction. Having to worship a Jew as God, they retaliate against other Jews and regard them as demons. Dear lady, you will say that it was the Aryans who liberated the Jews. In fact, this is not the case. One of the results of the quiet and gradual influence of the Jewish Bible on mankind was that the Aryans were freed from the shackles of the Middle Ages. William IV's answer shocked everyone, and they couldn't help but admire him. Even the Jewish Dutch rabbi, who had always stayed out of the matter, was shocked and looked at William IV in disbelief. He didn't expect William IV to stand up so openly and firmly to support the Jews, and even use Catholicism as a stepping stone to pave the way for Judaism. At this moment, he finally understood why James Rothschild, the last surviving member of the second generation of the Rothschild family, and Edmund Rothschild, the third generation, who were the two Rothschild leaders in recent decades, secretly turned to the Dutch king in front of him. Based on William IV's performance just now, the Jews were not at a loss if they stood on the side of the Netherlands. At this time, William IV naturally took the gaze of this important Jewish figure beside him in his heart. After being satisfied, he continued to emphasize, Judaism and Jews are all part of the Netherlands, so in the Netherlands, we do not discriminate against anyone. Even Buddhism in the Far East, we have never suppressed it. It is said that there are more than 200,000 Buddhists in our Kingdom of the Netherlands. So, today, what I say here to support Judaism is actually what I want to say to other sects. The Netherlands is a country that recruits talents in an eclectic manner. We need talents from all over the world. As long as you come here and are loyal to the Kingdom of the Netherlands, then the Netherlands here will treat you as one of their own. Once you come here, you are a Dutchman is our slogan. The words of William IV and Gutman at the press conference spread widely in Europe and the United States the next day. Based on the report of the European Times, the statements of the two appeared in the reprints of various countries. In contrast, Bismarck and the development of the situation in Germany within the German Empire, the anti-Jewish struggle centered on Frankfurt, the Rothschild family's Frankfurt base in Europe and the headquarters of the family's first-generation founder mayor, and the Junker nobles in Berlin, became more and more intense. The first German Emperor William I had to maintain a balance between the two major forces. Unfortunately, many times, William I was helpless to watch what was happening in front of him. After all, the Junker nobles are not vegetarians. This is the foundation for William I and Bismarck to survive. They can see it clearly, and the Junker nobles and people from other countries can also see it clearly. On the contrary, although the capital of the Jews is very important to the economic development and military expenditure of the German Empire, it is still not as good as the ruling power that can only be maintained with the support of the Junker nobles. On January 15, 1881, Bismarck publicly supported the election of Jewish politician Karl Lueger as mayor of the German financial city of Frankfurt. He gave up the power of appointment to avoid suspicion, and William I publicly expressed his approval. But 2 days later, his attitude became uncertain, because of the public opposition from the Junker nobles. In the end, William I could only refuse to approve it. For a time, the millions of Jews in the German Empire became the focus of discrimination from all walks of life in the German Empire. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 856 Greek Prime Minister visits Melbourne. The support and opposition to Jews in the German Empire became more and more intense, and countries including Britain, Spain, the Russian Empire, France, etc. showed panic. After all, the fact that Jews controlled the finances of various countries in their own countries made them panic. Especially the example of Germany was right in front of them. So governments began to restrict speech to prevent what happened in Germany from being replicated in themselves. At the same time, what was happening in the Netherlands attracted the attention of the outside world. According to the Athens News of the Kingdom of Greece, Greek Prime Minister Alexandros Kalmundros had secretly arrived in Melbourne, the capital of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, on the Australian continent, on January 20, 1881 for a visit. This strong Greek Prime Minister was the direct descendant of William II after the former King of the Netherlands airborne to Greece as king. He has always been different from another faction. He is the one who has the final say in the liberal faction, while other conservatives take turns to become the prime ministers competing with him. And his opponents are not as serious as he is in being loyal to William II. Therefore, from the first time he took office in 1865 to the 10th time he was re-elected on October 25, 1880, it should be noted that at this time, the Greek Prime Minister was elected every 2 years, not 4 years like in Britain, the Netherlands, the United States and other countries. Although some of them were concurrently appointed during the transition period, it can also be said that he almost occupied the position of Prime Minister for nearly half of the time since William II became the King of Greece in 1865. In addition to his loyalty to William II, in today's Netherlands and Britain, he, the vanguard of William II, really began to publicly support the Netherlands within less than 2 months of taking office. This greatly displeased Britain. Greece is surrounded by Ottoman Turkey in the east and the Kingdom of Italy across the sea in the west, the Austro-Hungarian Empire almost bordering the northwest, and the Tsarist Russian Empire across the air across the Kingdom of Serbia. In addition, Britain occupied the island of Crete. Almost controlling the central part of the eastern Mediterranean, it can be said that surrounded by Greece, every move is very sensitive to the countries that are very concerned about the Balkan Peninsula. According to the Greek newspaper Athens News, Greek Prime Minister Alexandros Kalmundros was invited by Baron Kaslan, the President of the Privy Council and the Speaker of the Lower House, to give a speech in the Lower House of the Kingdom of the Netherlands on January 20, 1881. He said that before he came to the Kingdom of the Netherlands, he had received support from the Greek House of Representatives Budget Committee. The Greek government plans to purchase 100 Dutch-made rifled guns and 20 Dutch second-generation submarines and at least 2 ironclad battleships of more than 5,000 tons. According to the public information of Athens News, the ruling party of Greece stated at the Council of the House of Representatives Budget Committee on January 5, 1881 that the government plans to purchase up to 100 of the most advanced rifled guns made in the Netherlands to provide new elements for Greece's coastal defense firepower. It is also used as a counterattack force to counterattack other countries' invasion of the Greek coastline. The countries also learned from intelligence from Greece that when the opposition asked the Greek government at the board meeting of the Budget Committee of the Greek House of Representatives to give specific examples of measures to exercise counterattack capabilities, the Greek government responded, because it may endanger national security, it is difficult to consider specific examples for security reasons. However, the government also thanked the opposition for its concern for national security, which proved that everyone has a responsibility in the face of national crisis. Therefore, after careful consideration, we propose to order 20 second-generation submarines and 2 5,000-ton steam ironclad ships from the Netherlands to patrol our coastline and improve our overseas defense strategy. It is said that the Budget Committee of the Greek House of Representatives hurriedly reviewed the budget for the fiscal year submitted by the Greek government on January 7. According to the timetable proposed by the Greek ruling party, the budget was submitted to the plenary meeting of the House of Representatives for voting on January 9, 1881, and was finally passed. The Deputy Prime Minister of the ruling party presided over the whole process, and William II also supervised. The Financial Times of the British Empire reported this with vigilance. The Greek Ministry of Defence had previously decided to purchase 100 advanced breech rifled guns from the Netherlands in the fiscal year 1881. The number was huge, and the annual budget had included special channels for procurement funds. In addition, the submarines and warships were all from the Netherlands. Obviously, Greece had completely embarked on the warships of the Netherlands' close allies. The newspaper also quoted General George, commander of the British Mediterranean Fleet, as saying that he warned the Greek government that it should pay attention to the presence of the British Mediterranean Fleet on Castor Island, and said that Greece should move towards Britain, at least not stand on the side of the conflict between Britain and the Netherlands. The owner of the largest naval power in southern Europe said strongly that if Greece harmed the interests of the United Kingdom, then the distance between the island of Crete and Athens would not be an obstacle for the United Kingdom to attack Greece, and the 100 rifled guns would not be an obstacle that the British Empire would be afraid of. He told the Financial Times that the British Mediterranean Fleet would fully support London's defence policy and accurately complete all tasks. Unexpectedly, the United Kingdom actually learned from the Netherlands and used military personnel to publish opinions in newspapers, just like the director of the International Intelligence Agency of the Netherlands, Sean, who directly announced the information about the joint naval exercises around the British Isles in Amsterdam and publicly expressed the views of the Netherlands, which surprised all countries. Now that the United Kingdom is facing the Greek Prime Minister's visit to Melbourne, the Netherlands, it is amazing that it also uses the same method to let General George, the commander of the British Mediterranean Supervisory Command, to break the deadlock. It can be said that it is a return of the favor, which can be an extremely accurate counterattack. For a time, all countries understood that although the United Kingdom was surrounded by joint exercises, it would not easily let go of the retaliatory actions. The good show is still to come. Therefore, the countries that originally liked to watch were naturally happy in their hearts. On January 21, 1881, William IV and his wife formally received the visiting Greek Prime Minister Alexandros Koumoundouris at the Dutch Royal Palace in Melbourne. Alexandros Koumoundouris was nearly 50 years old when William II visited in 1864. Now 17 years have passed, and at the age of 67, he is often exposed to the gentle Mediterranean sea breeze, but he does not look old. It's just that he has a long beard, which is popular in Europe, and he is a capable old man. In particular, he served as the Prime Minister of Greece for 10 times of varying lengths, which cultivated the temperament of a superior. William IV brought Queen Alexandra to meet the latter and his wife to hold a palace welcome ceremony. Then a palace banquet was held in the palace. Afterwards, Queen Alexandra took the initiative to invite the wife of the Greek Prime Minister to visit the palace, leaving William IV and Alexandros Koumoundouris alone. Chapter 857 I have been planning for Greece for many years. William IV said kindly, I haven't seen the Prime Minister for many years, and the Prime Minister is still as glorious as ever. Koumoundouris said mysteriously, yes, Your Majesty went to Greece in 1870 to attend the wedding of Crown Prince Frederick and Princess Louise. It has been many years since then. This is my first time to set foot in Melbourne. By the way, Princess Louise and the little prince are in good health, Your Majesty, please rest assured. William IV's face changed slightly, and he looked at Koumoundouris solemnly, as if caring and warning, then the Prime Minister must care about my sister-in-law and nephew at the government level, and don't let bad people hurt them. Koumoundouris' words just now made William IV's memory hit, and he recalled some beautiful and helpless memories. He thought of the extremely smart fourth princess in Britain, that is, his sister-in-law after 1870, Princess Louise, the Crown Princess of Greece. This person dared to love and hate. He had an affair with Frederick while he was married to her, and had an unspeakable relationship with her after marriage. In fact, this kind of affair was very popular in the royal family of the 19th century. Almost every emperor, king and even Grand Duke in Europe would become the subject of people's talk. For example, Napoleon I and Napoleon III had illegitimate children, and the current Swedish Oscar II was still in contact with several Swedish widows. The future British Edward VI, Prince Edward, who is now only the Crown Prince, was obsessed with other people's wives. In his early years, he had an affair with the wives of several British ministers, which shocked Britain and Europe. Even Queen Victoria put him in confinement and asked the eldest son of the British royal family to apologize publicly before the situation was calmed down. But he also became the object of ridicule by European countries. William IV came from the 21st century to the mid to late 19th century, but his thoughts changed with a change of environment and mentality. 4 years after a commoner became the Crown Prince of Europe, he took power and took charge of a country. He also had external plugins and was familiar with history, which brought unprecedented prosperity and strength to his country. People like challenges. With a great harvest in his career, William IV had taken a fancy to the history in his early years. Queen Alexandra, the wife of Edward VI of England, changed from the Queen of England to his wife. For this reason, he even went to Denmark in his early years to worship under the name of Anderson and became Anderson's student with Alexandra. After that, he ignored the repeated provocations of his rival, Prince Edward of England, and insisted on marrying the Danish princess to become the Queen of the Netherlands. It can be said that this changed the biggest change in the history of the character. Then, out of selfishness, he changed Princess Louise, who had long been in love with him, from marrying the Grand Duchess of a British noble to acknowledging his younger brother. Then the two evolved from the love letter complex of letters to the world of lovers who secretly crossed Schenking. Even William IV turned a blind eye to Louise's unexpected infertility attack on his brother who was hostile to him, resulting in the third generation of the Greek royal family becoming his bloodline. All of this seems to be completed in just a few words, but each one is very difficult. The reason why Princess Louise was able to succeed was mainly because someone helped her, and the person who helped her, the Greek prime minister in front of her, was one of the key roles. Rather than saying that Kumandaros was the most supportive royalist figure in the Kingdom of Greece who supported William II, in fact, this Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Greece was William IV's man. This Prime Minister, who had been imprisoned by Otto I of the Kingdom of Greece, had given up the idea of survival at the time, but was finally rescued by William IV and brought back to power in Greece. It is not an exaggeration to say that William IV is his reborn parent. So although he faced competition from domestic opponents later, he was unmoved. When others took turns to become prime minister, he almost had to serve as prime minister once every 5 years. He was an evergreen in Greek politics. His family and factional forces are rooted in all aspects of Greece, and the forces that followed him were the secret forces of William IV. Only William IV knew how important this 67-year-old man was to his control of Greece over the years. Of course, he needed to give him the sweet treat, but he also had a stick ready to beat him at any time. William IV, take good care of them, I think everything will be fine in Greece. Kumandaros was a smart man, and he naturally understood his position and represented this position. So he nodded without hesitation. William IV looked at the other party with satisfaction, and then said, regarding the threat from George, the commander of the British Mediterranean Fleet yesterday, what does Lord Kumandaros think? William IV tapped the table rhythmically with his fingers, and said, Britain is not easy to mess with. Be careful that Athens is really bombarded. Kumandaros smiled bitterly and said, naturally, few countries dare to confront the British Empire head-on. In the past few decades, except for the First French Empire and the Russian Empire, other countries have avoided it if they can, and chose to retreat and make concessions if they can resolve it. The Kingdom of the Netherlands has confronted Britain in the past 2 years, and has become the third country after France and Russia. Even the German Empire cannot compare with it. It can be expected to become a global power. William IV, stop flattering, let's get back to the topic. Kumandaros nodded, and then said seriously, Britain actually used the Mediterranean fleet to threaten nearby this time. The purpose is naturally not simple. I am worried that Britain has just faced the exercises around the British Isles by the Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, and Denmark, and has lost face. However, if it conducts retaliatory exercises against these 3 countries and the Netherlands, it will seem a bit petty, but it is unwilling to not fight back against a provocation of the Netherlands and be looked down upon. So I am worried that Britain will find another way to fight back against the Netherlands in other ways. William IV, it just so happens that you, the Prime Minister of Greece, are visiting us in Melbourne, so Britain will launch some attacks on Greece to fight back against us, the Netherlands, and save face. Commanderus smiled bitterly and said, "In fact, Britain has known about our visit to the Netherlands for a long time. When we passed through the Suez Canal, we had to obtain permission from Britain. After all, Britain controls the area. Without their permission, we can't pass through there." William IV was stunned, and then he came to his senses. "So, Britain came prepared," William IV said. "Come prepared," Commanderus also said with a headache. William IV couldn't help but feel nervous. Britain's unexpected move this time made William IV feel a little unexpected, but the world will never revolve around him, and the same is true for the Queen of England. Chapter 858, the cruiser Chaoyang returns to the Qing dynasty, and changes occur in the eastern Mediterranean. 1881, Ding Ruchin, a general of the Qing Navy, went to Port Adelaide, South Australia Province, on the Australian mainland of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to receive the warships Chaoyang and Yangwei. History, and repeatedly told Jindengan that the ship hull must be taken into account, hoping to build 2 first-class warships. The two also exchanged letters many times on military design issues. For example, because the original planned ship-borne torpedo boats were too large and too heavy, it would affect the layout and speed of the warships, so they negotiated with the Dutch Far East Group shipyard, and Li Hongzhang participated in the whole process and changed it to 2 lightweight motorboats that could release pole mines. The director of the Dutch Far East Group shipyard, Hurd, proposed to install a fixed muzzle loading gun, which was also changed to an advanced rotatable breech loading gun at the suggestion of Jindengan. I don't know if it was a communication, but on the same evening, the Haitian ship, which was fully loaded with Qing sailors, arrived in Melbourne, the Netherlands. For the first time, the young sailors of the ancient Qing dynasty and the ship flying the dragon flag were seen, and the whole country of the Netherlands was shocked. It was a historic moment. On that day, the mayor of Adelaide, South Australia, sent a telegram to pay tribute to Ding Ruchin, the Qing dynasty, and the Adelaide City Council also passed a resolution to present a congratulatory message to Ding Ruchin. In the future, Wang Jiangxin and Lin Musheng will take over as the captains of the second ship respectively. The Dutch say it is called the Captain. In the future history, these 2 current main battleships will retreat after the victory of the future Japan-Qing naval battle, and they almost became the training ships of the Qing Navy. The news that the Qing dynasty received advanced warships from the Netherlands immediately dispelled the dullness in the Far East sky, and this news also attracted many eyes in the Western world. One move can affect the whole body. Britain, France, the Netherlands and Spain are competing for hegemony in Southeast Asia and the Far East. The Russian Empire seems to be eyeing the eastern and northern parts of the Qing dynasty in the Far East and East Asia. Japan, which Britain fully supports, has not changed its evil intentions towards the Korean peninsula. Therefore, any major action in the region will attract attention. The Qing dynasty has introduced advanced warships from Western countries, which means that other countries will have to be more cautious when facing the Qing dynasty with advanced surface warships, especially Japan. As the chief minister of the Zhongli Yamen, Li Hongzhang has finally felt much more comfortable in front of Empress Dowager Cixi and Empress Dowager Qian because of the official handover of 2 warships by the Netherlands. Some time ago, the 2 Eastern and Western Empress Dowagers questioned him a lot because of the approach of the Netherlands and Japan. Ru Chang, has Japan taken any action recently? Li Hongzhang asked with some concern. It has to be said that Japan has been too quiet recently, which made Li Hongzhang suspicious. Even Guerrilla reported that Japan has been very low-key since the 3rd quarter of 1880. The king of Guerrilla even asked if it was the consequence of the warning given to the Japanese foreign minister after visiting the Netherlands, and asked if the Qing dynasty played a role in it. In this regard, he was able to appease Guerrilla, but Li Hongzhang was puzzled by this in his heart, because he knew that the Qing dynasty actually just wanted the Netherlands to issue a diplomatic objection to the Netherlands, a quasi-ally, and Japan, an old enemy, approaching to damage the interests of the Qing dynasty, but he never thought that the Netherlands would really take action against Japan for the interests of the Qing dynasty. But unfortunately, Japan's actions now meet the effects that the Qing dynasty needs to see. Could it be that the Netherlands really tested Japan? Is the Netherlands really willing to listen to the Qing dynasty? Li Hongzhang was the first one who didn't believe it. It was precisely because he didn't believe it that he asked Ding Ruchin, who managed the Biang fleet. Ding Ruchin is now highly valued by Li Hongzhang and is the admiral of the Biang Navy. He is Li Hongzhang's ally in the military. Ding Ruchin said, with the 4 warships Zhendong, Zhangxi, Zhudianshun ordered by our Qing dynasty from the British Empire coming to Qing dynasty for several consecutive years before 1879, the number of Biang warships has increased day by day. After the adults approved the subordinates to stay in the Biang coastal defense, the subordinates were sent to supervise the gunboats. However, because Britain needs to support Japan, Britain began to refuse us to buy advanced British warships. After that, we could only buy from the Netherlands, and finally evolved into a quasi-ally with the Netherlands that has a better relationship than Britain. Ding Ruchun said, in the past few years, Japan has been eyeing the Korean peninsula strongly, but most of the reason is the support from Britain and France. Now Britain can't protect itself, perhaps because the Netherlands cooperated with several Western countries to encircle the British mainland and British Isles in a joint exercise some time ago, and Japan was timid. At this point, Ding Ruchun smiled and said, perhaps, Japan is afraid that what is happening in Britain will happen to itself. Li Hongzhang was moved when he heard this. It's true. If the Netherlands and other countries also conduct island-circling exercises against Japan, Japan will really scare many people to death. After all, the British Navy is so powerful that other countries dare not take action. However, if Japan faces the above situation, it is very likely to face attacks on its homeland. Therefore, it is right for Japan not to show up at this time and choose to keep a low profile. Thinking of this, Li Hongzhang agreed with this statement. It seems that we need to increase our relationship with the Netherlands. Let's do this. We need to continue to buy weapons from the Netherlands. On January 25, the 6th year of Guangxu, 1881, Li Hongzhang, the minister of the Zhongli Yamen of the Qing dynasty, sent Ding Ruchun to lead Lin Taizeng, Deng Xicheng and others to Melbourne, the capital of the Netherlands, to negotiate the order of the sister ships of the Chaoyang and Yangwei cruisers. During his visit to the Netherlands, Ding Ruchun met with King William IV of the Netherlands, visited senior naval officers such as Jenda, the Dutch naval commander, and Joseph Karls, the chief of naval staff, and met with some famous Dutch warship designers at the time, leaving a good impression in the Netherlands. Taking the opportunity of going to the Australian continent of the Netherlands, Ding Ruchun took the opportunity to visit the Dutch East India Company's naval shipyard on his way back and visited the Dingian ship built by this company for the Qing dynasty. At the same time, seemingly threatened by the British Isles siege exercise, the British Ministry of Defence Deputy Minister of Defence Vicious, who is responsible for the British Mediterranean Fleet, said in London that Britain hopes to hold naval exercises in the eastern Mediterranean to strengthen the protection of key maritime infrastructure. The senior British naval official said in London that Britain released its latest maritime security strategy on January 26, 1881, outlining plans to hold annual British naval exercises and coordinate naval commands around the world to maintain British maritime interests and waterway security. The experience of the British Isles being surrounded by the Netherlands, Spain, Sweden and Denmark has made our British Empire feel an unprecedented crisis, which has exacerbated concerns about the threat to Britain's maritime security, said Vicious. This plan had already begun before the mainland was surrounded by the island exercise, but it will be strengthened to deal with such incidents. In response to the British Ministry of Defence's approach, the Dutch response plan is to strengthen cooperation between the Netherlands and its allies, especially in response to Britain's approach in the Mediterranean. The Dutch naval base in Albania and the ports of Spain and Greece will jointly expand joint coastal patrols and improve intelligence sharing between countries to detect threats as early as possible, such as using Mediterranean data and civilian ships to detect unidentified ships. Obviously, the Netherlands and Spain will use Greece's important position in the eastern Mediterranean to increase their influence there to counter the influence of the United Kingdom. At the same time, the Netherlands and Spain have publicly called on the United Kingdom to give the management of Crete to the Kingdom of Greece. This immediately won the favor of the Greek people, but on the contrary, it created malice towards the United Kingdom. Chapter 859, Mediterranean Waves Rise, Germany Panics. 1881, when the British Ministry of Defence announced that it would conduct a Mediterranean fleet exercise in southern Greece, Greek Prime Minister Kalomandaris held a summit with Dutch Prime Minister Linden on the same day. The two shook hands for more than 30 seconds, and such a long handshake was intended to show how deep the relationship between the two countries was. In February, the Netherlands will hold the Pacific Security Organization Prime Minister and presidential level meeting in Sydney. According to Dutch news, Prime Minister Linden has revealed to Commanders that he will invite him to attend the expanded meeting of the Pacific Security Organization plus partner countries. Some analysts pointed out that the two prime ministers have a reciprocal mentality and are actively trying to quickly deepen the relationship between the Netherlands and Greece to the position of the strongest alliance. Linden said at the press conference, "We will start the long-planned security dialogue between the Netherlands and Greece as soon as possible, and it is necessary to promote Greece's participation in the Pacific and the Netherlands' increased efforts in the Mediterranean security cooperation framework, further strengthen the Dutch-Greek alliance and Greece's integration into the Dutch alliance system, and increase Greece's deterrence and response capabilities when facing threats." Commanders arrived at the Prime Minister's office in Melbourne on January 26 and held talks with Dutch Prime Minister Linden. The two held a joint press conference afterwards. Although the two sides did not publicly issue an alliance declaration, they have always emphasized the importance of increasing the alliance relationship in their respective communiques. Commanders, Greece and the Netherlands have agreed to step up cooperation in multiple fields such as Mediterranean security, economic and cultural exchanges between the two countries, and to establish the Dutch-Greek Economic Security Dialogue Mechanism. Regarding the British naval exercises in southern Greece, I would like to say that the Netherlands and Greece agree that the Greek-Dutch alliance and the close cooperation between Greece and the Netherlands allies in the world are crucial to deal with the British naval threat, and we in Greece will actively cooperate. Although the Netherlands moved its capital to the Far East, the diet in Europe has also changed a lot. In particular, Linden's banquet that night was mostly Chinese dishes from the Far East, which surprised Commanders and the degree of localization in the Netherlands. However, despite this, the media of the two countries believe that Commanders and Linden both drink and have a good conversation at the dinner table. On the occasion of the summit between the two prime ministers, the Dutch Ministry of Commerce announced that it would invest a large amount of capital in the Greek national fitness and hope to use Greece as a transit point. In the future, the Netherlands will purchase markets and raw materials distribution centers in the Balkan Peninsula and the Mediterranean. This is the first time that the Netherlands has made such a major commitment to a country. The announcement by the Netherlands indicates that Greece will become the Netherlands' largest economic ally in southern Europe in the future. Greece has thus become the bridgehead for the Netherlands' economic invasion in the region. Greece can also rely on the capital of the Netherlands to greatly promote its economy. Even the economy in southern Europe, which has always been backward, may catch up with Italy in the West and even the traditional economic powers in the West in a few years. Netherlands Prime Minister Linden said that he had agreed with Commanders to further develop bilateral relations, and Commanders' visit also pushed the two countries to take the biggest step towards a thorough economic, political and military alliance. Yes, from the Linden-Commanders joint declaration, in which Prime Minister Linden positively evaluated the Greek government's proposal to allow the Netherlands to station troops in Albania and stated that the Netherlands would provide all-round security assistance to Greece, we saw that an alliance between Greece and the Netherlands is imperative. However, we should have expected this day to come when William III, the Grand Duke of Luxembourg, inherited the Kingdom of Greece many years ago. After all, there was no conflict between William IV and William III, father and son. When William III made a request to us and tried his best to promote it, we thought it would be like this, sighed German Emperor William I. Moltke nodded, and then said, Greek public opinion highly praised this summit between the prime ministers of the Netherlands and Greece, saying that this has become the final version of the relationship between the Netherlands and Greece, and it is also the most important milestone in Greece's foreign history. Greek public opinion believes that through Prime Minister Commanders' visit to the Netherlands, the two countries have achieved objective results in the fields of economy, security cooperation, and the promotion of Dutch-Greek relations. Crown Prince Frederik said, on the same day that the Prime Ministers of the Netherlands and Greece met, the United Kingdom held a naval exercise in the Mediterranean, and the target was the Kingdom of Greece. Even many of the British guns were pointed at many Greek islands, adding topics to the summit between the Netherlands and Greece. Bismarck, but the British exercise this time seems to have a great counter-effect, doesn't it? William I continued to exclaim, in the eyes of some people in the Netherlands, Commanders is a pro-Dutch sole figure in the Kingdom of Greece. When he was a child, he traveled to Rotterdam, the Netherlands with his classmates and his father. Commanders likes Dutch tulips, and especially misses his childhood days in the Netherlands. Therefore, the Netherlands arranged for Prime Minister Linden to take him to the greenhouse tulip breeding site cultivated in Melbourne, so that the two prime ministers could have a second meeting there. To be honest, I was moved by such a unique arrangement. The diplomatic etiquette of the Netherlands is indeed at its peak. Bismarck, I noticed the strong strength of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs many years ago when Nicholas Pearson, the Dutch ambassador to Prussia, was in office. Nicholas Pearson had to struggle for more than 20 years in the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs before he became the first deputy minister of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It can be seen that the Netherlands has put a lot of effort into cultivating diplomatic talents. However, our German Empire pays more attention to placing expectations on one person, which is both an advantage and a disadvantage for us. Bismarck said this and got back to the point. Lyndon developed a personal relationship with Commandus. The former is a newcomer, and the latter has been in power in Greek politics for 20 years. This close relationship will be helpful for future work. Your Majesty, I think this way of working should be promoted in Germany in the future. William I nodded and said, indeed, personal relationships can often make work more intimate. I agree. Others would naturally not object. Bismarck, in the past, Greece and the Netherlands have been concerned about their neighbors and have only developed economic and political relations. They dare not act rashly in the military. They are mainly afraid of Italy in the west and the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Russian Empire in the north, the Ottoman Empire in the east, and Britain stationed in Egypt and other places in the south. However, with the provocation of the Netherlands in the British Isles, Britain is now foolishly testing the Greek army in the Mediterranean. Isn't this an excuse for the Netherlands to let Greece put aside its scruples and worries and ask for military support from the Netherlands? As Bismarck finished speaking, everyone's face turned pale. It was also because of Bismarck's words that they realized that it was really possible that Commandus' visit and the British Isles siege exercise were part of the Dutch plan. If so, was Britain's move towards Greece also part of the Dutch plan? If so, did it mean that the Netherlands also had a response plan for the reactions of other parties? Was the German Empire also on the Dutch chessboard? Even Crown Prince Frederick, who is always careless, was speechless this time. Chapter 860, The Dutch Decline Theory or the British Decline Theory? While several German giants were discussing the development of the relationship between the Netherlands and Greece to the level of military alliance, and were panicking about the Netherlands' step-by-step plot against Britain and other countries, Queen Victoria and her two children were also worried about this. Princess Alice, the best friend of Prince Edward, is now married to the Duchess of Argyll in the UK. Historically, this is Princess Louise's. Crown Prince Edward said unhappily, if Greece was not a small kingdom to balance the Ottoman Empire, we would never support its existence. But now it has turned against us and is in cahoots with the Netherlands. It's really annoying. If I had known earlier, I shouldn't have let William II become the king of the Kingdom of Greece. Now we are in a passive position. Princess Alice glanced at Queen Victoria, and then said unhappily, Edward, you are saying that your mother is wrong. Edward shrugged his shoulders when he heard it, and looked at Queen Victoria with fear. I didn't mean that. Queen Victoria smiled and said, that's good. The Netherlands' series of schemes made us the target of their calculations, but we lost in the end. We don't blame others. Viscount Palmerston was also defeated by William IV's calculations. Not only did he try, but people from European countries didn't expect the Netherlands to develop so rapidly. It can become a giant comparable to us in just a dozen years. I didn't expect this either. So it's not wrong to say that raising a tiger is a disaster. Prince Edward curled his lips and said, Mother, you can still laugh. Princess Alice was thoughtful. Queen Victoria sighed and said, this world is a big chessboard. People who play chess always need to be patient, but people who watch chess are the most anxious. You are growing up well now, but you are still far from becoming a real chess player. Look at William IV. He always hides behind the Dutch government, holding chess pieces in his hands, but he is unwilling to show his face easily, so we can't find his chess moves, nor do we know his heart, let alone whether he is secretly exploring the chessboard behind his back, pre-making chess moves and copying them into the management of the world. We are in the open, and others are in the dark, so we suffer a lot. Edward, if you want to become a good chess player, you should not care about the loss of a chess piece, but play chess with the overall situation of the whole chessboard, and no longer worry about the loss of a soldier. Edward woke up immediately after hearing this, looked up and said with surprise, Mother, do you have a way to deal with the tricks of the Netherlands? Queen Victoria is a real strong woman in Europe. She has been the King of England for 44 years since she inherited the throne in 1837. It has been almost half a century since Britain became the world's most powerful country. If it weren't for the emergence of the Netherlands, Britain's position would have been more stable. Thinking of this, he had even less good feelings towards the Netherlands. Kingdom of the Netherlands, Melbourne. William IV was discussing political affairs with Queen Alexandra and his eldest son, Crown Prince Albert. Prince Albert said with a worried look on his face, "If immigrants from all over the world no longer rush to the Netherlands, but the Dutch immigrate overseas one after another, and it continues for a period of time, the Netherlands may really be close to decline." Prince Albert's words made William IV and Queen Alexandra laugh, and at the same time, they felt a flash of inspiration. Queen Alexandra glared at her eldest son unhappily. William IV said, "I must point out here that I do not think the Netherlands will decline because of this. As many British extreme conservative thinkers believe, the Netherlands' national destiny can achieve long-term prosperity and sustainable development. Because this is obviously not in line with the birth, aging, illness and death in the life cycle, it does not conform to the natural law of formation, development, maturity and decline in the life cycle. Just like from Spain to France, they have all gone through a process of formation, development, maturity and decline. Can the Netherlands escape this natural law?" The remarks of these extreme British experts, although they do not shout long life but reveal the eternal future, may be absurd. In fact, up to now, this kind of decline has been unreliable and has been repeatedly confirmed by history. For example, the Russian Empire began to fall into domestic political struggles after 1853, but Alexander I bravely came through. Even the Russian Empire has begun to recover from the Crimean War in recent years. Even while it has not changed its nature in the Balkans, it has also shown its ambitions in the Far East. William IV said, "At present, the Netherlands is beginning to be number one in the Netherlands. The former apparatus is nothing more than the decline of Britain." But what is the fact? Under the leadership of Queen Victoria, Britain not only defeated the French Empire across the English Channel that had troubled Britain for many years, causing France to fall into division, but also made the Austrian Empire, which Britain had been worried about, become an opponent of the same level as Britain after a few blows in Germany. Moreover, Britain also plunged the Russian Empire into chaos and activated the unrest of pro-British people in the Russian Empire against Alexander II. The latter broke a leg, and America used the German Empire to disrupt our influence. As a result, the German Empire hated us in the Netherlands, making the German Empire, which had a close cooperative relationship with us, become a stranger, and even created a gap on many issues. Albert, look at things, don't just listen to the good things that sound good. Sometimes, we also have to think about the coin aspect, which actually plays a huge role. As William IV spoke one by one, Prince Albert was really surprised to find that Britain had actually developed step by step, and many things were developing in a direction that was beneficial to Britain without his intervention. And it was so low-key that people could not feel it, which made him, who was not yet 16 years old, break out in a cold sweat. This was William IV sigh again. William IV said, "In this era, the only people who really make me afraid are 2.5 people." Queen Alexandra looked over when she heard this, obviously curious about who he was talking about. Prince Albert couldn't help but ask, "Who is father afraid of?" William IV, the first one is naturally Queen Victoria mentioned just now. This most powerful woman in Europe is famous for her forbearance. She became the Queen of England from a branch of the British royal family. It seems simple, but who knows how many intrigues and struggles there are. We know little, but it does not mean there are none. Queen Alexandra nodded and said, "Starting in 1840, the Queen took the throne and expanded globally. And she got satisfactory results. Britain began to rely on its huge resources and accelerated its industrial revolution. It has to be said that this woman is one of them. It is not an exaggeration at all." Prince Albert asked, "Who are the remaining 1.5 people that father is afraid of?" Chapter 861, The DNA of a Powerful Nation's Comprehensive Strength. Crown Prince Albert of the Netherlands was very surprised that his father, William IV, was still afraid of the 2.5 people when the Netherlands was at the top of the world in 1881. The first one was Queen Victoria of the British Empire, and he was very curious about who the other half was. Seeing that his mother, Queen Alexandra, also showed a curious expression, he couldn't help asking, "Father, who is the remaining half-person?" But William IV answered the question irrelevantly at first. In fact, many people in the world now believe that with the rise of the Netherlands, Germany, and the United States, Many people have predicted that Britain must weaken. It's just that no country can replace Britain, as they say. They all think that Germany, the Netherlands, the United States and other countries share the excess power shared by Britain and other old powers. Of course, in Europe, most countries believe that the German Empire has the highest chance. They have one thing in common: they all use economic strength as a criterion for measuring the strength of a country, including security. These people look at the rise and fall of a country based on population flow. However, although there are more and more claims of Britain's decline, in particular, the rise of the German Empire on the European land has disrupted Britain's previous diplomatic and military policy of driving wolves and swallowing tigers offshore. The rise of the Netherlands after the 1960s, especially the rise at sea, has gone from cooperation to confrontation with Britain's maritime hegemony, squeezing Britain's international hegemony space in all directions. In addition, the rise of the United States in the economy squeezes the British market space in the Americas, and Britain's three major attacks on the top, middle and bottom of these three countries have become more and more obvious. However, if we want to further confirm the decline, it is still debatable, because the evidence is not sufficient. William IV saw that Prince Albert was listening carefully, and he continued, looking at Queen Victoria's calmness, "We should know that the current predicament facing Britain has not yet made the most powerful queen in Europe feel real pressure. Perhaps it can be said that what the Netherlands is doing now is not really a critical moment for Britain. For those who believe in the decline of Britain, the best way is to observe the flow of the world's population. If the population around the world no longer rushes to Britain or leaves Britain's rule, but the British emigrate overseas or the British colonies break away from Britain's rule, and the state continues for a period of time, Britain may really be close to decline." William IV, you can even imagine that Queen Victoria will definitely not be as calm as she is now, and it is not impossible that she will panic. The more Queen Alexandra and Prince Albert listened, the more they realized that it was a matter of years. After all, at that time, Britain's foundation had been pried open, and its position as a superpower was no longer guaranteed. William IV, but for now, although the GDP and technological strength of the British economy have been surpassed by the Netherlands, and the circle of allies is not as large as that of the Netherlands, the British population is 1/3 larger than that of the Netherlands, and the population of the colonies is much larger than that of the Dutch native Africans and indigenous peoples. India alone has hundreds of millions of people, not to mention other places such as Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Pakistan, while the Netherlands has only about 40 million. So in terms of population, the Netherlands is far behind the United Kingdom. The population is the market for industrial products. The United Kingdom has such a huge market for rule, but the sales of industrial products are not as urgent as ours in the Netherlands. On the contrary, the Netherlands has a population of only more than 60 million, and the market is only 2/5 of that in the United Kingdom. What should we do? William IV naturally threw the question to Prince Albert. To cultivate an heir, it is most important to teach by example. Queen Alexandra looked at her eldest son with interest. She also wanted to hear how Albert answered. Prince Albert thought for a while, then said calmly, "I have carefully studied the previous policies of my father's personal rule. Compared with the European powers, the population of the Netherlands has always been our shortcoming. So my father has successively introduced various policies on population since he inherited the Netherlands from his grandfather in 1861. For example, at the beginning of his reign, the Dutch parliament passed the establishment of more universities and colleges throughout the Netherlands, and at the same time established a technical college. In addition, in 1862, the implementation of universal primary education was implemented nationwide. 10 years later, in 1875, the Kingdom of the Netherlands began to implement universal secondary education for all people. In the past 20 years, with the support of my father, the Netherlands has fully opened its doors to immigrants from Europe and even the world, attracting more than 5 million immigrants from Europe and the world, plus second-generation immigrants. The number exceeds 9 million. Our domestic institutions in the Netherlands predict that by 1885, the first and second-generation immigrants will exceed the 10 million mark. These immigrants and their descendants have greatly supplemented the population shortage in the Netherlands. In 1885, the population of the Netherlands was about to reach 27 million, surpassing the 26 million of the Kingdom of Spain and the 24 million of the Ottoman Empire. In Europe, the population of the Netherlands ranks 6th after the Russian Empire, the German Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, The British Empire and the French Empire. William IV asked, "Is that all?" Obviously, such a conventional answer could not satisfy him. Prince Albert paused, then said, "Father used addition, subtraction, multiplication and division to increase the number of immigrants to our Netherlands while also reducing the number of nationals of various countries in disguise. After the countries led by Germany learned of our purpose and limited the number, Father replaced quantity with quality to absorb high quality and high-end talents from Europe and the world. This is our immigration multiplication and division method. The talents lost in Europe have come to us. Although it is not true and accurate, it is not far off." William IV. Back to the topic of Britain's decline just now, those who say that Britain has declined are obviously premature. Unfortunately, most people tend to ignore this point. They pay too much attention to material strength that is easy to quantify, and ignore other aspects of strength, such as social cohesion, political leadership, ideological attraction, cultural attraction, etc. Of course, this does not mean that spiritual power is the only factor that determines national strength, nor does it mean that non-material power is stronger than material power. William IV. I just want to emphasize to you that national strength is not one-sided or single-dimensional. It should be comprehensive and comprehensive. Prince Albert suddenly said, "Father, you mean that national strength is a complex, and it is composed of spiritual power and material power?" The Netherlands is currently heading in this direction, and the reason why Britain is stable is because Britain still scores high in the aspects mentioned by Father. I owe a total of 10 chapters during this period. I have been busy recently, so I plan to pay it back during the Kingming Festival. As for the next new book, I am writing the outline and adding details recently. It is still early. The Netherlands is no less than 3 million words. The next volume will be released soon. The next volume will enter the military game of major powers and the dark clouds and military war stage on the eve of World War I. Let's take a look. Chapter 862. Britain is not declining. It is the Netherlands, Germany and the United States that are rising too fast. William IV was still discussing with his eldest son, Prince Albert, in the Dutch Royal Palace in Melbourne, Australia, in a teaching way, whether the international status of Britain, the rival that the Netherlands is facing now, is declining or rising. William IV. Albert, I wonder if you have noticed the commentary article entitled "Can Britain Be Great Again" by Rowan Elson, the president of Oxford University, published in the Financial Times. Prince Albert shook his head and said no. William IV. As a crown prince, you should read newspapers from all over the world, understand the reporting methods of countries around the world, and the different standpoints of different countries and regions in looking at things. Only then can you find the information you need from them, instead of listening to and believing in the content reported by your own newspapers. Prince Albert, Father, are you afraid that your own newspapers will report good news but not bad news? William IV nodded and said, "This is one of them, and the other is that you will be led in the wrong direction by the network of interests behind newspapers in various countries." Prince Albert showed a look of awakening. William IV. The president of Oxford University continued the view he had mentioned in his 1875 article on the economic and political competition between Britain and the Netherlands. One of the reasons why Britain experienced political decline, social polarization and division, and was at a disadvantage in the economic competition with the Netherlands after 1870 was the new system and so-called progressive culture, liberalism, which became popular in the 1850s after the British Tory and Whig parties took turns to come to power. Seeing Prince Albert puzzled, William IV explained, in the eyes of the president of Oxford University, the Whig Viscount Palmerston and his successor Gladstone's government had missed a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to correct their internal mistakes. Everything the Tory Disraeli did afterwards was just following in their footsteps. In short, liberalism, led by the Whigs and followed by the Tories, has led Britain on a path of decline. Prince Albert, Father, since he is so harsh in his criticism of the two British parties, he must be very direct towards us in the Netherlands. It is possible that the Germans will solve the problem accordingly. William IV nodded and said, when people gather together, many problems can be solved accordingly. For example, the rise of Britain in the past was related to its successful leadership of the First World Industrial Revolution, steam industry. Prince Albert, what about us in the Netherlands? William IV, the Netherlands? The reason why the Netherlands rose, like the German Empire and the United States, originated from what I call the electrical industrial revolution. The reason why this electrical industrial revolution broke out in the three countries of the Netherlands, Germany and the United States is closely related to their strong soft power, which is different from other European countries. Among them, we in the Netherlands are at the forefront. William IV. Hugh Smith, the president of Cambridge University and the dean of the School of Political Science, once lamented to hundreds of British MPs in the British House of Commons in 1875 that every basic industry of the Netherlands, textile, mining, and steel industry, all rely on the technology brought by the craftsmen, workers, technicians, and managers of the Netherlands and European immigrants. It is also based on the study repeatedly emphasized in British media newspapers that many of the achievements of the Netherlands are due to immigrants. Royal Albert, Further, it seems that the president of the top British university is using the Netherlands as a background to pressure people from both parties in his country. William IV agreed, the openness of British academia depends to a certain extent on the attitude of the royal family. The royal family needs some people to check and balance the Tories and Whigs in the UK, so it is not surprising that these people who are only loyal to the British wedding dynasty royal family exist. William IV returned to the previous topic and said, but don't think that his words are really accurate. In fact, it is because of their existence that Britain has been able to make rapid progress since Queen Victoria came to power in 1837 and became the world's #1 power. For example, now, although the United Kingdom has been through joint maritime exercises around the British Isles by the Netherlands, Spain, Denmark, Sweden and other 4 countries, countless people are talking about the decline of Britain. But what is the reality? Even today, Britain is still the undisputed #1 power in terms of hard power. Its comprehensive strength in terms of military, population, area, economy, etc. is still the best in the world. More importantly, the British are very united with the outside world. Even the former Irish and Scots have now been assimilated and are waving flags around Queen Victoria. Prince Albert asked, the Netherlands. William IV said with a gleam in his eyes, the Netherlands has a population disadvantage, so the Netherlands must continue to maintain it, so that there are not a few lower classes and elites in the Netherlands allies who dream of becoming Dutch. In other words, we need the Netherlands allies to cultivate elites, and then continuously supply high-quality blood to our Netherlands. William IV said, have you read Professor Herman van Peron's recently world-renowned new book, The Rise and Fall of Great Nations? Albert nodded hurriedly, indicating that he had read it. William IV, in this regard, Herman van Peron, president of the University of Sydney in the Netherlands, has a very thorough understanding. In his book, he gave an extremely optimistic prediction for the German Empire. The German Empire replaced Britain as the largest economic power in Europe in 1890 by relying on its industrial strength, and the United States of America will become an economy that is no less powerful than Britain. In 1880, the Netherlands replaced Britain as the world's most powerful economic power by relying on its industrial and financial strength. As for military, the Netherlands relied on a reliable network of allies to gain an advantage over Britain. Herman once publicly mentioned that Britain was not on decline, but that the other 3 countries of the Netherlands, Germany and the United States rose too fast. Therefore, after the inherent pattern of global power and strength was broken, Britain lost the largest share, and the global power pattern underwent a fundamental fission that was irreversible and began to shift from Britain and France in Western Europe to other countries such as Central Europe and even overseas on both sides of the Pacific Ocean, such as the United States and the Kingdom of the Netherlands. When William IV said this, he thought of the relationship between his motherland and the hegemon America, which was similar to the relationship between Britain and the Netherlands. Thinking of this, William IV lamented the similarity of fate. The countries he lived in were all rising powers, while the opponents were all established superpowers. Prince Albert saw William IV pull out a document from the drawer behind him. When William IV stretched it in front of him, he could see clearly what was written on it. It was clearly written, Research Report on Measuring National Strength. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 863 The British Empire Takes Action. On January 26, 1881, Britain announced that the British Empire's Mediterranean fleet would conduct naval exercises in the eastern Mediterranean. Unexpectedly, The French Empire did not express its position, but the Austro-Hungarian Empire was the first to stand up and support Britain. As a major European country and a country along the Mediterranean, the Austro-Hungarian Empire has the right and obligation to maintain peace in the Mediterranean and the power to make decisions made by any country. We will participate in Britain's actions in the Mediterranean. Austro-Hungarian Foreign Minister Bismarck. The statement of the Austro-Hungarian Empire was unexpected. The Austro-Hungarian Empire has been very low-key in recent years, especially since it was defeated by the Kingdom of Prussia, which is now the German Empire, in 1866. It seems that Joseph I was discouraged, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire did not seem to be as enthusiastic as before in the struggle for power in Europe. Even in recent years, the Austro-Hungarian Empire has laughed off the enmity with the German Empire. It seems that the two countries have reached a consensus on the issue of European power. On many issues, they openly support each other and have a consistent external stance. It seems that they are willing to follow the German Empire behind. Because of this, the statement of the Austro-Hungarian Empire this time is strange to everyone. Is the Austro-Hungarian Empire tired of being alone? Or is it that the Austro-Hungarian Empire is expressing a certain position? Just when everyone was thinking about the reasons for the change in the Austro-Hungarian Empire's position, another great power's statement made people feel nervous. This country is the Ottoman Empire, the hegemon of the Middle East. Although there were differences with Britain on the Middle East issue, the Ottoman Empire, which still relied on Britain's support, also stood up to support Britain. The great friendship between Britain and the Ottoman Empire has been abroad for 100 years. The relationship between our two countries will not be completely reversed because of a small number of differences. Istanbul cherishes its relationship with London. We are not influenced by others, so the great Ottoman Empire is also willing to support the Mediterranean fleet exercise this time. The Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Ottoman Empire are both European powers, one of the most powerful countries in Europe and even the world. In addition, the host of the exercise, Britain, which supports the most powerful comprehensive country, is close to the three countries. Any powerful country in the world today is enough to stop and pay attention. On February 1, 1881, the Kingdom of Bulgaria, which has always been pro-British, announced that it would send warships to participate in the British exercise in the eastern Mediterranean after obtaining the consent of the Ottoman Empire. The situation is getting worse and worse. Strangely, France has not made a statement yet. On February 3, 1881, anonymous officials from Britain, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and the Kingdom of Bulgaria pointed out that in response to the increasing military strength of the Greek military in the eastern Mediterranean and the Balkans, the Ottoman Empire and Austria-Hungary are strengthening security cooperation with Britain. A spokesman for the British Ministry of Defence said in London on the 3rd that Britain, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria will conduct joint anti-piracy combat exercises and search and rescue exercises centered on the British Mediterranean fleet in the waters east of Crete and the Aegean Sea between Greek and Turkish from February 4 to 15, 1881. The four-nation exercise is commanded by Lieutenant General George, commander of the British Mediterranean Fleet. Bulgaria sent the Sofia-class sailing warship and the Black Sea-class sailing warship to participate. Austria-Hungary, University of Sydney, School of Political Science. The school's president, Herman van Perron, is holding a faculty and students meeting at the school's political science conference. Next to him are several guests invited by the University of Sydney today, including Tim, director of the Netherlands Governance Project at the Rotterdam National Peace Foundation, Mist, an expert on the British Empire Project at the Netherlands Centre for Strategic and International Studies, and Baroki, director of the Center for Strategic and Budgetary Assessments, a think tank at the University of The Hague. Herman van Perron said on the podium, as the second largest university in the world and the first in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the University of Sydney has always advocated applying what we have learned and combining the virtual with the real, so that all the students present can learn real knowledge instead of just talking about it on paper in school. Today's theme is the joint exercise in the Mediterranean Sea by Britain, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and the Kingdom of Bulgaria, which has attracted the world's attention recently. The debate competition of the entire School of Political Science is held. Next to me are the talents from major think tanks in the Netherlands, who'll debate on this today. The Austro-Hungarian Empire once had several wooden sailing warships with tall masts and majestic sailing on the sea. In the late 1940s, they were replaced by steam warships with black smoke. Since the early 1950s, various naval powers have begun to build new ironclad ships. As a traditional land power in Europe, the Austro-Hungarian Empire developed late in the field of steam warships, but later built several good ironclad ships. Because of its awkward location in the nearly closed Adriatic Bay, the Austro-Hungarian Navy has always been relatively weak. However, with its strong military industry, in 1861, the Austro-Hungarian Empire's first Dragon-class ironclad ship was born. This class of warships has a displacement of 3,000 tons, and the side ships are equipped with 10 48-pound smoothbore guns and 18 24-pound muzzle-loading rifled guns. From then on, the Austro-Hungarian Navy entered the era of ironclad ships. Because of its awkward location in the nearly closed Adriatic Bay, the Austro-Hungarian Navy has always been relatively weak. However, with its strong military industry, in 1861, the Austro-Hungarian Empire's first Dragon-class ironclad ship was born. This class of warships has a displacement of 3,000 tons, and the side ships are equipped with 10 48-pound smoothbore guns and 18 24-pound muzzle-loading rifled guns. From then on, the Austro-Hungarian Navy entered the era of ironclad ships. In July 1866, the Austro-Hungarian First Fleet won the Battle of Lissa. In 1867, the Austro-Hungarian Empire started to build the Lissa ironclad ship to commemorate this victory. The ship adopted the newly born central gun room design, that is, the 12 229mm main guns were not only placed in the armored central gun room, but also the displacement of the Lissa reached 7,000 tons, which was considered a relatively large ironclad ship among the naval countries at that time. Herman van Perron stood on the high platform, looking around below, and then asked several guests nearby. This time, the Austro-Hungarian Empire dispatched 3 Lissa-class ironclad ships to participate in the exercise, which can be said to be the main force. Why did Austria-Hungary do this and what is the purpose? Do you have any opinions? Following the questions raised by Herman van Perron, all the teachers and students of the School of Political Science at the University of Sydney immediately looked at these guests. Finally, Tim, director of the Netherlands Governance Project at the Rotterdam National Peace Foundation and a visiting professor at the University of Sydney, threw out a brick to track Jade and said, Austria-Hungary's move to stand up and support Britain at this time is nothing more than 2 points. The first is to win the favor of Britain, and the second is that it has been silent for many years, and standing up at this time is nothing more than showing Europe's presence. The former can hedge the leverage that Austria-Hungary gained when cooperating with the German Empire, and the latter also means that Austria-Hungary is beginning to be unwilling to be interpreted as a younger brother of the German Empire. At this time, a voice rang out, I disagree with Professor Tim's statement. Everyone looked and saw that it was Baracchi, director of the Center for Strategic and Budgetary Assessments, a think tank at the University of The Hague in the Netherlands. Baracchi said, I think what Austria-Hungary did is more likely to be a trick of the German Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire to make the Mediterranean or the whole of Europe even more muddy. Chapter 864 Mediterranean Storm. On the 3rd, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Ottoman Empire and the Kingdom of Bulgaria announced that they would join Britain in conducting Mediterranean exercises on February 4, 1881. According to the British Ministry of Defence, on February 10, 1881, the 4 countries will conduct combat exercises in the Aegean Sea to improve the ability of the 4 countries, including Britain, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria, to deal with threats in the Mediterranean. This is the first time that Britain and the Ottoman Empire have conducted joint exercises in the Mediterranean for many years. It is also the first time that Britain has conducted similar cooperation with Austria-Hungary and Bulgaria, and it is also conducted in the Eastern Mediterranean. A well-informed person from the Greek government said, now the Greek kingdom has protested on the grounds that the exercise site of Britain and the Ottoman Empire is not far from Crete, but Britain does not care or ignores it. The exercise site remains unchanged and is even held in the Aegean Sea, in the east of the Kingdom of Greece. We have expressed our dissatisfaction to the governments of the 4 countries that appeared at the exercise site this time. In this exercise, Britain will use more than 3 British Sovereign-class steam warships. As one of the most powerful surface warships in the world, these 3 warships are also the main force of the British Mediterranean Fleet. They will practice there and put unprecedented pressure on Greece and other threats. We have made a technical request for support to our ally the Netherlands. The Kingdom of the Netherlands, University of Sydney. The school's president Herman van Perron, Tim, director of the Netherlands Governance Project at the Rotterdam National Peace Foundation, Mist, an expert on the British Empire project at the Netherlands Centre for Strategic and International Studies, and Barouch, director of the Centre for Strategic and Budgetary Assessments, a think tank at the University of The Hague, are participating in a General Assembly of Teachers and Students at the School of Political Science at the University of Sydney. Herman van Perron, just now, Professor Tim believed that the reason why Austria-Hungary unexpectedly participated in the British Mediterranean exercise was to show its presence and increase the weight of cooperation with Germany, while Professor Baracchi opposed it, saying that this was a trick by Germany and Austria-Hungary to try to muddy the waters in Europe after consultation. Dear students, Professor He, next we will ask Professor Mist, an authoritative expert from the United Kingdom, the host of this Mediterranean maritime exercise against the Kingdom of Greece, and an expert on the British Empire project of the Netherlands Centre for Strategic and International Studies. Professor Mist, what is your opinion? Mist, I have been studying Britain since I started college in 1850, and it has been more than 30 years since I started studying Britain. Herman van Perron, spending 30 years on the research of a country, Professor Mist can be said to be one of the most authoritative British experts in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Students, Professor Mist is also a member of the Royal Netherlands think tank and one of the important members who provided British opinions to our great William IV. Obviously, with the exposure of Professor Mist's new identity, all the students were full of imagination, and at the same time, they were more optimistic about his status. Mist, Britain is an expert at the proverb that flies don't bite seamless eggs. In the past 30 years of research, I found that Britain has been looking for greater opportunities in Europe and even the world for hundreds of years. Yes, it does not understand its position and the purpose it wants, and then create an environment that is conducive to the development of Britain itself. The Germanic nation is Britain's greatest identity in Central and Northern Europe, but that was only a part of Britain's use to deal with France in Southern Europe and Italy and Paris in the early 18th century. It successfully won over Northern Europe and the German Confederation and other countries to form an alliance. In the late 18th century, it used religious issues to begin to disintegrate the powerful Habsburg dynasty, because this dynasty, Austria, was Catholic, just like Southern Europe, Spain and France, so it caused resistance from the Netherlands, Sweden, Denmark, and members of the North German Confederation including Prussia, and won over the support of the Orthodox Church of the Tsarist Empire to resist Rome. In the end, the Protestantism established in these countries was given the same status as Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy. Britain finally won the restrictions of Rome and gained the power to govern the country without control. In the early 19th century, the British took advantage of Catholicism and the disuse of Southern and Northern Europeans. Finally, the giant and once powerful First Empire established by Napoleon was defeated by the British. The three great powers of the Catholic allies, France, Austria and France, lost their circle of allies after France was defeated. They were suppressed by the Protestants led by Britain and Prussia and the Orthodox Church of Tsarist Russia. Finally, Britain completely rose to become the most influential country in Europe. As Professor Mist gave examples one by one, all the people in the School of Political Science were silent and secretly surprised. President Herman van Perron, Britain's strength used to impress people, but Professor Mist's talk has made the audience more able to grasp the trajectory of Britain's rise. It turns out that the professor has studied Britain very thoroughly. Mist said, every foreign move made by Britain has a profound meaning. Although the dispute with the Netherlands seems to be losing ground in recent years, if you study it carefully, you will find that Britain has not suffered any serious damage, and even many of them are just a kind of self-contraction on the part of Britain. The reason why Austria-Hungary participated in the Mediterranean exercise led by Britain this time is obviously that Britain must have made a move to win over the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Of course, the most important thing is that Britain has long seen through the embarrassing position of the Austro-Hungarian Empire when cooperating with the German Empire, so it wants to cut a wedge in the cooperation between Germany and Austria, and prepare for intervening in the relationship between the two countries in the future. Of course, these premises are because the Austro-Hungarian Empire is willing to accept Britain's gift. Professor, will the reaction of the German Empire be an obstacle to the Austro-Hungarian Empire's move? A student raised his hand and asked. Professor Mist, student, how do you know that German Prime Minister Bismarck will not take the opportunity to let Austria-Hungary test the depth of the muddy waters in the Eastern Mediterranean? I think Joseph I of Austria-Hungary understands the ambitions of the German Empire. Because of this understanding, he knows that the German Empire would be willing to see Austria-Hungary's actions. Similarly, Britain also understood the ambitions of the German Empire, so it instigated Austria-Hungary to participate and helped Austria-Hungary continue to maintain its position as a powerful country in Central Europe, trying to contain the German Empire. Another student raised his hand and asked, "Why did the Ottoman Empire participate?" Professor missed. That's because the Ottoman Empire was extremely dissatisfied with Greece's independence from the Ottoman Empire in 1860. It only gave up resistance under the pressure of powerful countries such as Britain, France, Russia, Austria-Hungary, etc. So Britain's move gave the Ottoman Empire an opportunity, especially the recent rise of Greece, which has been dissatisfied with the Ottoman Empire's rule over the island of Crete, where Greeks account for the majority, and these people hope to return to Greek rule. Therefore, Greece has been arguing with the Ottoman Empire for many years. Britain may have seen this opportunity and persuaded the Ottoman Empire. Chapter 865, The Storm Before the Four-Nation Group. British Prime Minister Gladstone and Dutch Prime Minister Linden, a global rival, engage in a diplomatic duel. Newspapers from various countries made the above comments on the Netherlands' global diplomatic blockade of Britain, Britain's alliance in the Eastern Mediterranean to conduct maritime intimidation exercises against Greece, the Netherlands' younger brother, and British Prime Minister Gladstone's visit to Constantinople, the capital of the Ottoman Empire, and his obvious attempt to win over the Ottoman Empire. That day was the day when Dutch Prime Minister Linden, who was visiting the Kingdom of Greece, a close ally of the Netherlands, returned to Greece and held talks with Greek King William II and Greek Prime Minister Koumoundouris. Before the Madrid summit of the Nordic Four in Madrid, Spain in early March this year, Dutch Prime Minister Linden was carrying out radical diplomacy. On February 7, local time in Greece, European media reported that Britain was uneasy about the move of Dutch Prime Minister Linden. Similarly, Dutch Prime Minister Linden's visit to Constantinople during this sensitive period and his move to the front line when Britain was holding a multinational naval exercise in the Eastern Mediterranean also expressed the Netherlands' uneasiness. In the British newspapers, there is also a picture of Dutch Prime Minister Linden visiting the monument to the martyrs who died for their country in Athens on the 7th. It is said that the monument that Linden visited was the place where many Greek national treasures were looted by the British. Many Greek civilians were killed by British invaders in Athens. Later, the people of the country built it themselves. Linden's visit here shows that he is reminding the Greek British to make bloody memories. Linden's move against Britain shows his ambition. The British Times quoted British political experts as saying that the factors of the Kingdom of the Netherlands have been particularly prominent in the strategic reorganization of forces in Europe and even in various regions of the world in the past decade. It is the main driving force for British Prime Minister Gladstone to counterattack many joint naval exercises in the Eastern Mediterranean recently. The newspaper report analyzed that various alliances have been formed around the world. In particular, the Netherlands and Spain, as well as the influence of Greece's geographical advantages in the Mediterranean, have prompted the UK to prepare to prevent the Netherlands and suppress the influence of the Netherlands before the Nordic Alliance summit composed of the Netherlands, Spain, Sweden and Norway. The UK will focus on the Netherlands, strengthen diplomatic activities, and accelerate the pace of geopolitical reorganization in the Indian Ocean, the Pacific Ocean and Europe. This means that Britain will no longer stand still and watch the Netherlands expand its circle of allies and refresh its presence. Britain began to use its influence to strengthen its ties with other countries and balance the Netherlands. In order to balance the Netherlands, Britain began to actively carry out diplomatic activities. After Prime Minister Gladstone visited Constantinople in the Ottoman Empire from July 7 to 8, 1881, he will visit Vienna in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, where he will meet with the country's power figures and negotiate cooperation. There, Gladstone will announce Britain's new European and even world diplomatic strategy. Later, while the Netherlands and other countries hold the Nordic Alliance Four-Nation Summit, Gladstone will visit Paris. After returning to the UK, he will also advocate to countries around the world at the British House of Commons and the House of Lords Rights Conference on the global situation caused by the Netherlands Global Alliance that they should avoid standing in line, and urge the British Parliament to take comprehensive and responsible response measures. The director and chief researcher of the Australia Institute, CRIM, said, at first, Gladstone, the British Whig Prime Minister, was regarded by the Netherlands as a moderate towards the Netherlands like Viscount Palmerston. However, in the process of curbing the threat from the Netherlands, he has repeatedly taken unfriendly actions towards the Netherlands in recent years, especially on issues such as Chile and the sovereignty of the Strait of Malacca. Britain has taken specific and tough measures, and sometimes even aggressive measures. Krim also believes that Gladstone's actions have demonstrated Britain's ambition to suppress the Netherlands in an all-round way. Seeing that the circle of Dutch allies is constantly expanding in the world, and the relationship between Britain and most of these allies is deepening, Britain hopes to prevent the Netherlands from dominating these alliances. Krim, the Netherlands expressed dissatisfaction. He analyzed that, in this situation, in order to expand the diplomatic and military status of the Netherlands, Prime Minister Linden is making full use of the status of the four countries that make up the Nordic Alliance. Spain, the rotating host of the Nordic Alliance, is also willing to cooperate with the Netherlands because the host country decides to invite countries to participate in the summit and has already invited the Prime Ministers of Portugal, the United States, the Kingdom of Greece, Italy, and France to attend the summit as observers. In addition, Spain has also invited the ambassadors of the Russian Empire and Austria-Hungary to Madrid to participate in the observer talks. Krim, director and chief researcher of the Australian Institute, said, Netherlands Prime Minister Linden used the alliance system of the Nordic Alliance Summit to win support for his alliance foreign policy against Britain. After British Gladstone stepped up his efforts to confront and check the Netherlands did not hide its dissatisfaction. Taking Gladstone's visit to Constantinople, Vienna and Paris throughout February as an opportunity to attack the Netherlands, Britain and the Ottoman Empire even pointed out in a joint statement in Constantinople that the two governments expressed dissatisfaction and strong opposition to unilateral attempts to change the status quo of power and territory in the Eastern Mediterranean, and emphasized that Greece must accept the current rule of the Ottoman Empire on the issues of the Aegean Sea and Crete. The two countries expressed their non-support for the territorial claims put forward by Greece. In this regard, some Dutch analysts believe that Gladstone's move in the Ottoman Empire is an implication. Britain supports the Ottoman Empire's territorial claims. If the Ottoman Empire supports Britain's interests in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East, then Britain will support the Ottoman Empire's territorial claims. On February 8, 1818, there were reports in the Netherlands that Ottoman Prime Minister Prince Abdul Wasi rejected the request for a meeting made by the Dutch ambassador to Constantinople. Analysts believe that this is a very rare thing, reflecting the reality that the Ottoman Empire occasionally had tensions with the Netherlands during the worsening of the Anglo-Dutch struggle. The Australian Daily News pointed out that what makes the Netherlands particularly uneasy is the status and security importance of the Ottoman Empire and Britain in the Middle East. The newspaper reported that the rapprochement between the two countries will have a huge impact on the Netherlands in the Middle East and the Eastern Mediterranean. In recent days, it has been reported that the two countries have decided to expand cooperation on local issues such as the Suez Canal, the Black Sea, the Mediterranean Sea and the Gulf of Aden. In order to confront and suppress the Netherlands, Britain will continue to instigate the Ottoman Empire to make more policies against the Netherlands. The newspaper called on the Dutch government to formulate a new Middle East strategy as soon as possible. Chapter 866, Signs of Economic Crisis Emerge. Kingdom of the Netherlands? In the King's office, William IV put down the dynamic data about the Netherlands in his hand with a heavy heart. According to the investigation, the recent overexpansion of domestic production and corruption in stock trading in the Netherlands, if it continues like this, the Netherlands is likely to experience a Dutch economic panic. At that time, the domestic economic situation will continue to deteriorate, and even in the next 10 or 20 years, labor riots may be frequent, and our society will enter a state of unrest. William IV frowned when he thought of this. The term economic crisis is not unfamiliar to him at all, and precisely because it is not unfamiliar, he is afraid. Every economic crisis will cause large-scale unemployment and social unrest. Since the 18th century, many social unrests and government collapses have been related to economic crises. Since the Great Revolution in 1848, the Netherlands has not experienced a large-scale economic crisis for 33 years. The social stability is mainly due to the good trend of social and economic development and the people living and working in peace and contentment. Now the Netherlands is the most developed country in the world, and even the UK cannot compare in this regard. Because of this, if an economic crisis occurs in the Netherlands, the damage to the social level will be absolutely huge. He picked up a pen and wrote the words overproduction on the blank notebook next to him. If an economic crisis really occurs in the United States, overproduction will be the main cause of this crisis. William Ivey couldn't help but think of the panic caused by the economic crisis in the United States in 1873. Now the Netherlands is the same as the United States. The industrial enterprises and farms produce too many things. The oversupply in the market has caused a sharp drop in product prices. In the more than 10 years before 1880, the output of pig iron produced in the Netherlands doubled, but its price plummeted from 200 Dutch guilders per ton to 130 Dutch guilders per ton. Cotton, as the main traditional export product of the Netherlands, has increased its supply by more than 50% in more than 10 years, and the limited international market cannot fully absorb the excess products of the Netherlands. If it is not good, it is very likely that many Dutch farmers and industrial workers will become the worst victims of this economic depression, and even many farmers will declare bankruptcy. The whole society will fall into a miserable situation of economic depression, but this does not prevent smart people from making money at full speed and taking the opportunity to rise. According to the data, this is just the prelude, but Andrew Carnegie, who immigrated from the United States to the Kingdom of the Netherlands, has become a leader in recent years. During the Dutch economic bubble period, he built factories in other places at a high cost, and even bought out all the industries of his competitors, including several steel companies. This far-sighted approach has enabled this guy to occupy a private leadership position in the Dutch steel industry. Then, now in the Netherlands, more and more people followed Andrew Carnegie's example, squeezing out each other and improving efficiency and reducing costs, trying every means to pull each other down. After the brutal competition, a single industry has one or several companies dominating. Thinking of this, William Ivey couldn't help but think of the issue of anti-monopoly. But he was afraid that too much intervention would trigger resistance from capitalists and even have a huge impact on immigrants, so William Ivey chose to stay put. In this way, competition in these fields has also formed a monopoly, and product prices are no longer generated by the game between many sellers and the majority of sellers in the open market as before, but by a few companies that control these industrial fields according to their production costs and the profit returns they hope to obtain. In order to avoid brutal duels in competition, some companies even united to control prices and exclude competition to ensure the effective return of company profits. The company consortium formed in this way is called a trust. It is precisely because of the emergence of the trust that there are now very few stories of Dutch entrepreneurs struggling alone in the open market to compete for wealth, and many companies have joined the trust movement. Trusts are very important to major companies. If others interfere with the operation of your company, it will eventually be left to fend for itself. Of course, many people dream of becoming the head of a trust company. Even in this case, many people in the Netherlands still believe in achieving success through self-struggle. Under the propaganda of some industrial giants, this belief has gradually become popular, which is good. At least it is very important to solve the economic crisis. However, as trusts continue to grow, the economy gradually decreases or even disappears, and opportunities gradually decrease. There are still people who work hard and save money, looking forward to the arrival of success. Now there are some people in the Netherlands who create novels to create brave, honest, and successful characters through their own struggle. Therefore, the prevalence of trusts has not disappointed people, especially for those with lofty ideals who lose confidence and despair. The yearning for success and the belief in struggle have made people no longer afraid of the control of these fields by one or several giant industries. In fact, this is understandable. The Netherlands is the most capitalist country in the West in the entire 19th century. As mentioned before, the Netherlands was the first country to implement the shareholding system. The control of the two countries is controlled by large enterprises and the royal family. The East India Company is a platform for controlling the country and dividing the interests according to shares. Only because of this, William Ivey can naturally understand that these trust giants are absolutely inevitable in the Netherlands. Moreover, in the 19th century, the idea of cannibalism and the practice of the West advocating an elite society, the Netherlands naturally inevitably measures the country by who is the elite. The industrial giants of the Netherlands are actually the root of the evil he left behind. America will still develop according to the current model 15 years later, and the business elites will still control the country as always. The political elites are just nominal spokespersons for the American business consortium. Andrew Carnegie believed that the laws on corporate supervision were already perfect, but William Ivey did not think so. Instead, he made further amendments to them because the Supreme Court should strive for excellence. Therefore, the Supreme Court of the Netherlands amended the legal concept of due process. Due process is a basic principle of Dutch law. Before 1880, due process referred to the step-by-step implementation of the procedures. After the amendment, the focus of due process shifted to whether the procedures were legal. William IV promoted the changes in these laws in order to prevent more people from taking the lead in the future. Due process establishes that Dutch law requires that no one can deprive a person of life, freedom and property without due process of law, and that no one will be arbitrarily arrested or have their property illegally confiscated. This can strengthen the constraints on the public power of governments at all levels in the Netherlands. Chapter 867. The three parties landed in America. International issues are often just one of the topics of conversation after dinner. In fact, Dutch people are more concerned about what is happening around them in their lives. On February 1, 1881, the Supreme Court of the Netherlands added a due process item to the law, so from that day on, due process became a basic principle of Dutch law. However, the formulation of laws is one thing, and the implementation is another. Especially when the factions in the Dutch political arena are seriously divided. At present, the opposition Liberal Party controls the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the province of Willemstad, Victoria, the province of South Australia, the province of Queensland, the capital Melbourne, and the province of Hawaii. The Christian Party controls the province of Northern Australia, the province of New South Wales, and the province of New Guinea. The Socialist Party controls the province of Western Australia, the province of New Zealand, the province of Tasmania, the province of Sulawesi and South Mandan, the province of the South Pacific, the province of Maluku, and the province of the East Indies. The three parties are basically equal in power in the Netherlands and Europe, including the Christian Party, the Liberal Party, and the Socialist Party, mainly the part of Belgium that returned to the Netherlands. From the above, the Socialist Party can be said to have the widest area of influence, but it is remote. The Liberal Party is in power in the main cities with high population density. The Christian Party is in the middle. Therefore, the cooperation between the Christian Party and the Socialist Party has overwhelmed the Liberal Party. Because of this, the competition among the three parties in the Kingdom of the Netherlands is becoming more and more intense. From civilian support to capital competition, to the struggle for sphere of influence in the political arena, the three most powerful forces in the Netherlands have never stopped. On February 8, 1881, an incident in the Netherlands attracted the attention of the entire Kingdom of the Netherlands, and even many people in Western countries were seized by the focus. Because on this day, when the Supreme Court of the Netherlands ruled on whether the provincial councils of South Australia and Queensland could supervise the railways in their respective provinces, the Supreme Court judge ruled that the provincial laws were invalid. However, the reason for the judge's ruling was that he believed that these laws were essentially unfair to the railway companies. Rather than the provincial councils violating the due process of legal procedures when passing these laws. The meaning of this judgment is that these specific local, provincial and municipal laws should be formulated by the Supreme Court, rather than being decided by local officials. Queensland and South Australia are the traditional turfs of the opposition Liberals, while the Christian Party and the Socialist Party have formed a coalition government. The Supreme Court currently has a total of 1 Chief Justice and 8 Justices, a total of 9 Justices. Therefore, this has caused great controversy. These 9 Justices are appointed by the Dutch Prime Minister after being approved by the Dutch Senate and approved by the King of the Netherlands. As long as they are loyal to their duties, they can serve for life and cannot be removed without impeachment by the Parliament. However, they can automatically retire when they reach the age of 70 and have served for 10 years, or 65 years old and have served for 15 years. In addition, the salary of the justices of the Dutch Supreme Court cannot be cut. At present, the Chief Justice is from the Christian Party. Among the other 8 justices, 2 are from the Christian Party, 3 are from the Socialist Party, and 2 are from the Socialist Party. It can be said that the forces are balanced. If they are impeached, the procedure is quite difficult. The lifelong system can ensure that these justices are not under pressure from the executive branch, that is, when the judge's judgments do not obey the will of the government, they will not be demoted or punished by the government for a face. To ensure judicial impartiality, when the government is a party to a lawsuit, the Chief Justice does not have to violate the law and conscience to make a ruling in favor of the government. Therefore, the Supreme Court is not elected by ordinary people, but nominated by the current Prime Minister. After the senator votes for 2/3 of the votes, the king signs and takes effect before the prime minister can appoint him. Just now, the question of whether the local councils of Queensland and South Australia have the right to supervise was directly rejected. On February 10, 1881, the Dutch Supreme Court once again emphasized that it overturned a law in Queensland to supervise its provincial borders, on the grounds that these railways belonged to interprovincial business and only the Dutch Parliament had the right to ask. This led to unfair competition in interprovincial trade. In order to stop this evil result, William IV intervened and the Interprovincial Trade Committee of the Kingdom of the Netherlands was established, stipulating fair use of fees and fair competition and industrial efficiency. Under the influence and help of the Supreme Court, the Dutch gave up fairness and chose efficiency. The worsening of the three-party competition has attracted great attention both in the Netherlands and abroad. At the same time, due to factional chaos among the 9 justices of the Supreme Court, the forces behind them made judgments to protect their own interests, which led to a series of unfair behaviors. The leaders of some large companies were called robber barons. However, most Dutch people turned a blind eye to this situation. They were more willing to pay attention to whether each company could provide sufficient and cheap products. Therefore, the robber barons were not as severely blocked and condemned in the Netherlands as many people expected, and political corruption was formed and fostered, and illegal and cruel behavior in trade persisted. In 1881, Andrew Carnegie, the largest steel tycoon and railway magnate in the Netherlands, pointed out that even if millionaires selfishly wanted to satisfy their own interests, the value they created still benefited many people. Many Dutch people now agree with Carnegie's statement. On February 15, 1881, former Prime Minister Thorbecke of the opposition Liberal Party visited New York, where he was warmly welcomed and met by Douglas, the leader of the ruling Democratic Party and the President of the United States. Douglas said that Thorbecke's previous ruling position was highly recognized and that the Federal Republic of the United States believed that Thorbecke was the most steadfast partner of the United States. But at the same time, Chester Alan Arthur, leader of the opposition Republican Party in the United States, who would be elected president for the first time in September 1881, arrived in New South Wales, where he was warmly received by David Blank, the second in command of the Christian Party and the Dutch Minister of the Interior. Obviously, the top Republican was trying to win over the ruling party of the Netherlands to counter the counterattack of the opposition party in the United States that supported the Democratic Party. Borrowing strength to fight strength, this trick was indeed mature. At the same time, the Socialist Party became the object of both parties in the United States, which made people feel surprised. After all, even in the Netherlands, this situation has now extended to the United States, which is really remarkable. On February 16, 1881, Britain, Bulgaria, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire began exercises in the Aegean Sea. All Greek navies gathered at the border to be alert. At the same time, the Dutch stationed in Sarandaport in the Principality of Albania in northwestern Greece had supported Greece and patrolled the entire western Sea of Greece. On the island of Corfu, which Greece leased to the Netherlands, the Dutch land and naval forces remained on war alert. Chapter 868 Dutch Royal Think Tank. According to our intelligence, the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs is gradually becoming politicized, which has affected its diplomacy. The Dutch foreign policy's ability to perform its duties is being decentralized and its cohesion is being weakened. At the Dutch Royal Palace, William IV frowned and said to the people next to him with dissatisfaction, "These people are Cantor, the director of the Dutch National Security Council and the Atlantic Affairs Coordinator, and the other 3 are Akchi, the Indian Ocean and Pacific Coordinator, Samuel, the European and African Coordinator, and Felix, the Americas Coordinator. These 3 people are not members of the 3 major parties in the Netherlands, but have always been the royal family of William IV." William IV worriedly said, according to a new report that is about to be released internally, the ability of soldiers in the Netherlands Ministry of Defense to perform their duties is being weakened because civilian staff in the Ministry of Defense are more interested in party politics than combat readiness. The National Military Service and Independent Group report is an urgent alarm bell, reminding us to pay attention to the corruption of the Ministry of Defense's politicization and its spread on the Netherlands defense. The first-line statistics compiled in this report are staggering. After that, William IV handed the report in his hand directly to Cantor, the head of the think tank, and the latter's face became worse the more he read it. Afterwards, as the report was circulated among several people, everyone showed a solemn look. Cantor, director of the Netherlands National Security Council and coordinator for Atlantic Affairs, said at this time, last year, the U.S. Army did not meet the conscription standards, with a shortage of 25%. Major American newspapers have predicted that the situation will be worse this year. The number of recruits for the Navy and the Army in the new fiscal year is 50% less than normal. The public's confidence in the military is declining sharply. Even most of the recruits from military families come from such families, and they are unlikely to recommend their children to join the Army. William Ivey asked Felix, the coordinator for the Americas, what caused the decline in conscription in the United States of America. Felix seemed to be well prepared and answered, according to a poll we commissioned Dutch Loki in the United States in November last year, the most common explanations include that the military leadership of the United States of America is too politicized, supporting the Republican and Democratic parties to split the Army. There is also the so-called awakening culture that undermines the effectiveness of the U.S. military. Another survey found that 65% of active U.S. military personnel and women are worried about politicization, including training that conforms to the awakening culture and lowering physical fitness standards. The military retention rate is also declining, and the reasons are the same. William Ivey asked Cantor, what about the problem of our Dutch army? Cantor hesitated, then said frankly, at present, at all levels of the Dutch military, the teams of former Prime Minister Thorbecke and current Prime Minister Linden both emphasize diversity, fairness and inclusion, which is tarnishing the Dutch soldier spirit. The soldier spirit is rooted in the values of courage, honor and self-sacrifice. It is the foundation of military morale, respect and success. Politicized initiatives such as diversity, fairness and inclusion will always give rise to huge bureaucracies and distract them from actual work and attention. The Army is not immune. A naval report for reference by our Dutch parliamentarians pointed out that now, non-combat courses consume naval resources, block complaint channels, create administrative troubles, and take up valuable naval training time. Finally, Cantor said, at present, these two factions and three parties have caused problems in the Netherlands, whether in diplomacy or defense. The Ministry of Defense of the cabinet government composed of Linden's Christian Party and the Socialist Party sometimes seems to value cultural warfare more than combat training and highly lethal weapons. Now the Linden government seems to have started a policy of using political parties to put pressure on foreign countries and win over foreign countries, and seems to have forgotten that soldiers can work for the country. William Ivey, so, at present in the Netherlands, the party politics formed by political parties is seriously corroding the combat effectiveness of the Dutch military. Not only, Cantor said, not only in the Ministry of Defense, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, there is currently a practice of opening up exchanges with foreign countries by the three parties. Just like this time in the United States of America, the Socialist Party took advantage of the situation and maintained exchanges with the two parties in the United States. The Dutch Christian Party formed an alliance with the Republican Party in the opposition, while the Dutch Liberal Party in the opposition formed an alliance with the Democratic Party in power in the United States. This is very troublesome and helpless for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the core of our Dutch foreign policy formulation. William Ivey, isn't the Minister of Foreign Affairs Joseph Beit? Cantor, yes, it's the second in command of the Socialist Party in the cabinet coalition government formed by the Christian Party and the Socialist Party. William Ivey suddenly asked in an unfathomable manner, a person from a small party became the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the other two parties deliberately suppressed him? Akshi, do you think it's right? Akshi is the Indian Ocean and Pacific coordinator and an important member of the royal think tank. Akshi replied, Your Majesty, I remember that you proposed that a major political parties in the Netherlands could form a coalition government. It seems that at that time, there were rumors in the outside world that Your Majesty seemed to delegate power to the three parties. So from the establishment of the Socialist Party in 1870 to the defeat of the Liberal Party in 1878 with the Christian Party, Dutch society was full of Your Majesty's support for the current situation. Therefore, the party diplomacy formed at this time is in line with the direction that Your Majesty had previously guessed. The other people nodded. William Ivey said without comment, I heard that several of their political parties have also reached out to the two regimes in the north and south of France. Cantor, yes, the Christian Party supports exchanges with Napoleon III's Second French Empire, while the Liberal Party, like the German Empire, supports President Thierry regime in the south, the French Third Republic. William Ivey, what about the Socialist Party? Cantor, the Socialist Party still supports the middle policy as always, not helping either party, and seems to want to slowly accumulate strength and then compete with the two parties. William Ivey asked Samuel, the coordinator for Europe and Africa, the Mediterranean exercise led by the British has entered its final stage, and Prime Minister Lyndon has also left Greece. After visiting Italy, he will arrive in Madrid, Spain to attend the Nordic Alliance's four-nation summit. What is the overall situation in Europe now? Samuel, Britain and the Netherlands are waging a global diplomatic war, which has entered the Cretaceous stage. The atmosphere in southern Europe is already intense, but Western Europe is still indifferent, especially Portugal and Germany, which seem to be too calm. But Italy is very special. Recently, it has been very enthusiastic about her Prime Minister Lyndon, but it has also extended a visit invitation to Gladstone of the United Kingdom. It seems that it wants to take advantage of both sides. This time I am following Italy's usual style, William Ivey, cap, Greek letter rho, said with disdain. He thought of the various three-sex slave behaviors of Italy in his previous life, especially the poor appearance of fighting many wars. It felt funny. Chapter 869 You are worthy of being the British Crown Prince. 1881, the over 40-year-old British Crown Prince Edward, Prince of Wales, directly named the Netherlands in the Financial Times, the most influential newspaper in the UK, and made the most direct and comprehensive criticism in history. 1% own, 1% rule, 1% enjoy, exposing the mask of democracy and freedom in the Netherlands. Members of the opposition Liberal Party of the Netherlands funded candidates of the rival Christian Party and Socialist Party to participate in the party competition, because they believed that these people were more likely to be defeated by themselves than other liberals in a three-party two-party showdown. Africans and Aboriginal people accounted for more than a quarter of the parliamentary constituencies in Western Australia, and only one of the 8 constituencies was dominated by Africans and Aboriginals. The Dutch cabinet government formed by the alliance of the Christian Party and the Socialist Party continuously sent immigrants from all over the world to cities governed by the Liberal Party. Provinces such as New South Wales and Queensland had to enter a state of emergency. The original political ecology was about to be broken, and the Liberal Party's monopoly in these places might soon be broken. Former Liberal Prime Minister Thorbecke was raided by the Netherlands Anti-Corruption Bureau, the eldest son of Baron Castleman, President of the Dutch Privy Council and Speaker of the House of Commons, was attacked and injured at home. These are the real scenes of this midterm election year in the Netherlands. The Netherlands has long been touted as having the so-called freest elections in the world, the essence of democracy. Everyone has the right to run for election, one person, one vote. However, the truth is not so. Prince Edward said in the Financial Times, Dutch elite politicians have little interest in so-called democracy. They only care about the power of the Netherlands. They overthrow the government they don't want and support the regime they want, just like Chile. In the 4 presidential elections of the United States of America, the Netherlands was behind the scenes, and the Dutch occupied the final dominant position. As long as there are military bases, the Netherlands doesn't care about anything else. Prince Edward also disclosed in the newspaper that he published a paragraph of anti-Dutch politicians from all over the world, and took the opportunity to say in the newspaper, the Netherlands often packages itself as a democratic ambassador who cares about others, but the Dutch political elite actually doesn't care about world democracy at all. At most, it's democracy within the Netherlands, and this is for votes. Their actions under the banner of democracy are just to gain influence in countries around the world, and then to gain the support of good forces in each country, and finally to influence or interfere with the operation of the government of that country. The ultimate goal is to ensure that the Netherlands can build a situation in the world that supports the Dutch hegemony. Prince Edward further called for not being deceived by the rhetoric of the Dutch name. As long as there are Dutch military bases in Ecuador and Chile in Latin America, it means that the Netherlands has ulterior ambitions for South America. As long as the Dutch circle of allies continues to expand in the world, it will squeeze the international space of other big and small countries, and the threat of the Netherlands will become greater. He further stated that the United States and Argentina did not pose a threat to the Netherlands, but the Netherlands interfered in the internal affairs of the United States very seriously, and Argentina turned against the Netherlands because of the Dutch interference in its internal affairs. In the end, the Netherlands even said that Argentina was very warlike, which was just a word game. Edward I Bale returned to the changes in Britain and the Netherlands over the past few decades around the theme of war and peace. He discussed the decline of Britain's influence after the South African War. The Netherlands has always taken advantage of Britain's failures to rise step by step. The British Crown Prince also listed in detail his views on the world, especially the establishment of the Netherlands' influence and hegemony in the Far East. Talking about the circle of allies around the world led by the Netherlands, Crown Prince Edward said that the Netherlands always claimed that it had the ability to provide allies and countries around the world with the ways to improve the economy and life. But in fact, while the Netherlands was developing the economy within each of its allies, it was gradually infiltrating the elite's thoughts within each country, turning these people into pro-Dutch people, and maintaining the vital interests of the Netherlands in each country became the duty of the elites of these local countries. Think about it, the Netherlands sent more than half of the natives in Australia and the East Indies to the African continent, which did not bring direct improvements to the lives of these original natives, let alone democracy. This was just to maintain the ruling status of the Dutch. After all, the proportion of these natives accounted for 1/3, which was a great threat to the Dutch. Therefore, in the past 2 decades, the local native ratio has been reduced to less than 15%. So the Netherlands did not bring extra benefits and democracy to its allies, but destroyed the local society. In this regard, Crown Prince Edward said frankly that the essence of Dutch politics is elite politics, and the senior politicians who dominate Dutch politics are almost not interested in so-called democracy. They only care about the power that the Netherlands can project in the world. The Netherlands hopes that its troops will enter the Mediterranean on a large scale. As Spain joins the Nordic alliance composed of the Netherlands, Sweden and Denmark, the Netherlands, with the support of Spain and the close relationship with Greece, will strengthen its military deployment in Greece. The Netherlands is building a large number of military bases in South America and Central America, and it is said that the Kingdom of Siam in Southeast Asia, the predecessor of Thailand, Laos and Cambodia, has begun to lease ports to build naval bases to counter the presence of Britain and France there. In Africa, the Dutch management is the strongest. In Mozambique, Tanzania, Zambia and Congo, etc., the Netherlands has completely assimilated the local land and population. This is all related to the rapid growth of the Netherlands in recent years, said Crown Prince Edward. The Netherlands has launched a series of challenges to Britain since 1876, trying to challenge Britain's hegemony in the world's seas. The struggle for control and sovereignty of the Strait of Malacca in 1876 will become a new starting point in future history. Britain has been the hegemon of the sea for hundreds of years. Crown Prince Edward then pointed out, some people would say that they would rather live under the rule of the Netherlands than Britain. I would like to ask you, how did the Netherlands achieve super strong cohesion with other nations, and make people believe that they have become an ally of this country, even though they are not interested in helping the country develop its economy? This is just a word game played by the Netherlands. He cited statistics from Oxford University, saying that since 1860, the Netherlands has launched more than 50 diplomatic and domestic interventions in other countries around the world, making it the most diplomatically aggressive country in the world. However, the Netherlands is able to shut up its allies and partners, and many of them even ignore the facts and always point the finger at Britain and other opponents of the Netherlands. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 870, Signing the Spanish-American War? In the history of the previous life, at the end of the 19th century, the GDP of the United States and North America exceeded that of the former colonial master, the British Empire, and ranked first in the world. The placeholder Walling began to look outward. In the foreign struggle, the first opponent encountered by the United States of America at that time was Spain. Spain was a declining old colonial empire, which had almost occupied the entire South American continent. So at the end of the 19th century, the United States wanted to expand its power southward, so the United States and Spain, which owned the colony of Cuba, met in the Caribbean Sea. With the excuse of the main incident deliberately created by the United States, taking advantage of the stronger national strength and closer geographical location, the old colony Spain was defeated, and the United States hegemony in Central and North America was established. The Netherlands is in the same situation as the United States in the previous life. It's just that the Netherlands was earlier than the powerful United States in terms of economy, and its GDP exceeded that of Britain in 1875. And the direct opponent is the most powerful country, the British Empire. The industrial development of the Netherlands at that time made the Netherlands, like the United States at that time, look for dumping places for goods abroad, and did not relax its attention to the Qing dynasty across the Pacific Ocean. However, because the United States was busy preparing for war with Spain, it was still a step slower than European countries in the fight for the Qing dynasty market. The Netherlands was not important enough because of its small size before. So the smart Americans immediately thought of the open-door policy of sharing the benefits, and successfully achieved the goal of sharing the spoils with European powers without bloodshed. The Netherlands took over this policy of the United States and entered the Qing dynasty. At the same time, with the relocation of the capital to Melbourne, Australia in 1871, the Netherlands became a real Far East power. The relationship between the Netherlands and the Qing dynasty has become stronger than ever before, and the Qing dynasty also sent a large number of students to study in Dutch universities in the Far East every year. At the same time, the Qing dynasty also brought cheap labor to the Netherlands. Now there are tens of thousands of Qing people in the construction of roads and railways in the Far East. It can be said that any market in the Qing dynasty has promoted the Dutch economy. While expanding outward, the Dutch also started a progressive movement at home. History has proven that the progressive movement is the reaction of the Industrial Revolution in the social and cultural fields. It requires people to get rid of the ignorant and hazy political and cultural views and have a clear understanding and design of their own future. Everything is changing, but these changes have a clear direction, which is the inevitable rise of the Netherlands. William IV couldn't help but fall into contemplation. Now when the United States and Spain compete for the position of South American hegemony, it was the United States that first helped South American countries to become independent. Later, Spain was finally driven out of the South American continent, leaving only Cuba in the Caribbean. It can be said that the United States won and did what it said. When the Spanish-American War broke out, Spain was already on the decline and was no longer the same as it used to be. It was also very isolated internationally. At that time, it was no longer the huge empire it once was in the world. Instead, it was a colonial country with only Cuba, Puerto Rico and the Philippines at the end of the 19th century. Among them, the Philippines and Cuba have also launched armed uprisings against Spanish colonial rule and liberated parts of the country. These battles have distracted Spain's attention. As the initiator, the American government, in order to step on Spain to take power, recruited 200,000 soldiers from across the country, established a powerful fleet known as the third largest in the world, deployed it at strategic points around the world, and equipped the army with advanced equipment such as rapid-fire field artillery, telegraphs and telephones. Compared with the advanced equipment carefully prepared by the United States, most of the Spanish troops in the colonies were old, weak and disabled, with only some old-style troops, and no combat preparations at all. In the fight for the Spanish colony of the Philippines, Theodore Roosevelt, Assistant Secretary of the Navy of the United States, appointed Commodore George Dewey as the Commander-in-Chief of the American Asiatic Squadron. Dewey had participated in the American Civil War of 1861. He was a well-known military leader who had experienced many battles and had a unique insight and in-depth and detailed analysis of occupation. Before entering the Philippines, he read a lot of materials related to the Philippines and studied the sea map of the Philippines in detail. It was not until the beginning of 1898 that Dewey, who had officially assumed command, commanded the fleet to go south from Guam, Hawaiian Islands, and headed straight for Manila. He actively prepared for the war, purchased a coal carrier and a supply ship, and required the ship's personnel to exercise every day and all the machines to be ready for battle. On April 25, 1898, Theodore Roosevelt, Secretary of the Navy of the United States, sent a telegram asking Dewey to speed up the fleet to the Philippines to capture or destroy the Spanish fleet there. After the American fleet, which had a great advantage in terms of total tonnage, speed, artillery and combat readiness training, entered Manila Bay, it encountered the Spanish fleet and annihilated it in a short time. At the same time, the insurgents in the Philippines were also encouraged by the United States to actively participate in military operations, occupying many important islands and towns, and establishing their own national government. In 1898, under the attack of the American Navy and the Army, and the blow of the Philippine insurgents, the Spanish army in Manila City ceased fire and surrendered after a symbolic resistance, and Spain's colonial rule in the Philippines and Asia was officially ended. After driving the Spanish colonists out of the Philippines, The cunning American Federation betrayed its promise to support Philippine independence and implemented military occupation of the Philippines. The Philippines' purpose of fighting against Spanish colonial rule was naturally to lose their own national independence, rather than to replace another great power to inherit and rule them. Therefore, they were very angry and strongly opposed the American military occupation. However, their strength was too weak. Despite the struggle, the United States finally spent 3 years and successfully suppressed the Filipino resistance and imposed decades of military rule on them. William IV said to himself, "Now Spain is allied with the Netherlands. It has not joined the camp of Britain and Germany, but has joined the Nordic alliance formed by the Netherlands. The Confederate States of America is now supported by Britain." Historically, the 13 southern states that were unified after the Civil War are still independent, and the United States is also divided. As one rises and the other falls, Spain's rise again may be just around the corner. This is not on the interests of the Netherlands, especially as Spain is trying to create Spain's second major source of power in the Philippines, which may be a threat to the Netherlands in the future. There may be competition for the Netherlands in the north, especially in the adjacent waters such as the Maluku Islands and New Guinea, and this will be very negative for the Netherlands to exert influence in the north. William IV's eyes suddenly lit up. Perhaps it would be a good idea to use Spain first and then suppress it, or even stab it in the back later. Chapter 871 Smithsonian Monetary Agreement. William IV wanted to stab Spain in the back, but that was all for the future. Now that the Netherlands is facing competition with Britain, it will naturally not push Spain into the arms of Britain. No one knows that William IV actually values the good industrial economy, but what he wants most is the growth of the Dutch guilder's position in the world. He wants to have the power of the dollar, the financial hegemony of the United States in the future. As long as they are familiar with the power of the dollar in the previous life, no country will not be afraid and will also show a very envious look. America's allies have always been very helpless to obey other slaughter, while opponents have been reluctant to be fleeced by others. French presidents Charles de Gaulle in the mid-20th century have always been unwilling to follow America as younger brothers. Although they have seen the drawbacks of the Bretton Woods system, they have not been able to come up with a better solution. On the contrary to the Netherlands, Chulalongkorn of the Kingdom of Siam is currently very helpless. In fact, the Argentine president pointed out sharply as early as 1875 that the Dutch guilder, as the privileged currency of the Dutch Allies Circle, turned the trade of the Dutch Allies Circle into America's warehouse. On the contrary, the Netherlands benefited from the de-guilderization movement after the deterioration of relations between Argentina and the Netherlands, which successfully helped to get rid of the gold shackles. The Bretton Woods system established by the Dutch Allies in 1867 collapsed completely, but no plan, including Triffin's World Dollar Plan, could be accepted by all parties. It was still turbulent for several years until the establishment of the new national monetary system of the Dutch Allies in 1877, namely the Melbourne Monetary System. But according to this special title, on the surface, the low position of the Dutch guilder was downgraded, from the only pricing and settlement currency of the Bretton Woods system to currency comparable to the British pound, the German mark, and the French franc. But in fact, the Dutch guilder was liberated by this. Under the Bretton Woods agreement system, the Dutch guilder and the gold reserves were tightly tied. You know, this shut has always been the only position of the British pound. In addition to the fact that the Netherlands currently requires countries to use the Dutch guilder to trade in weapons exports, countries also need the Dutch guilder to purchase Dutch industrial products. At the same time, Dutch merchants also use the Dutch guilder to purchase raw materials around the world for cross-border transactions. The Dutch guilder has even become the official currency of the Kingdom of Siam in Southeast Asia, and South American countries have also announced that the Dutch guilder can be used in their territories, making the Dutch guilder almost an officially recognized currency. Due to the international status and strong economic strength of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Therefore, the Dutch guilder has even surpassed the national currency in terms of financial trust. On February 20, 1878, the Kingdom of Greece announced a monetary settlement arrangement with the Netherlands. On April 5, 1878, the Kingdom of Denmark announced that all goods could be purchased in the country using the Dutch guilder. In July 1878, the United Kingdom of Sweden and Norway announced that the Dutch guilder would be included in the national currency reserves, and at the same time, someone in the Swedish parliament had proposed to allow the Dutch guilder to be bartered in Sweden. By December 1878, the South American Union, which consisted of Chile, Bolivia, Ecuador, Venezuela, Peru, Colombia, Mexico, and the 6 Central American countries, Honduras, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Guatemala, and Costa Rica, discussed a meeting of the Ministers of Finance, Ministry, and the governors of the central bank. The Dutch guilder had already become a hard indicator currency recognized by all countries, and the Dutch guilder officially became a regional currency. For the first time, it became the largest common currency in South America. The Russian Empire also announced that it would increase its gold reserves, reduce the pound, and place 50% of its gold in Amsterdam and Sydney in the Netherlands. Spain also expressed its support for the exchange of the Dutch guilder with the Spanish currency. From the financial independence of various countries to the support of various countries for the Dutch guilder to replace the pound, there was a sudden surge of de sterling in many countries in the world. However, de sterling has made countries think differently about the Dutch guilder. In fact, this is not a new drama. The Netherlands was abandoned once in history. That was in the 18th century, when the Dutch tulip capital was dominated and used by countries led by Britain. The de sterling movement initiated by the Netherlands has now made Britain anxious in the global financial market. In the past, the gold standard was the main standard. With the rise of the Dutch guilder, the credit and scope of applicable countries have increased and decreased, with the Smithsonian Agreement of 1871. Many people may not know what the Smithsonian Agreement is. In fact, this agreement is named after Smithson, the president of the Dutch central bank at that time. The Smithsonian Agreement is also known as the Smithsonian Institution Agreement, or the Melbourne Agreement. It is an agreement concluded by the main allies of the Netherlands on December 18, 1871 on the adjustment of exchange rates. In 1871, many countries in the world had doubts about the pound. As the second generation of the Rothschild family in the European financial world passed away, the first family of European finance began to enter a period of decline, and the financial markets of various countries entered a period of chaos. Therefore, the pound crisis occurred in this year, and the British government announced that the pound would no longer be exchanged for gold, that is, it would no longer bear the obligation of the United Kingdom to exchange gold for pounds held by other countries' monetary authorities to maintain a fixed ratio between the pound and gold for many years, similar to the Bretton Woods Conference in the Netherlands. On January 20, 1875, Britain announced its new economic policy, which mainly declared that Britain would no longer recognize the peg of some countries' currencies to the pound sterling, and even implicitly overturned the peg of the pound sterling to gold, while gold could not be pegged to other currencies or required the consent of Britain to trade. Obviously, the sword was aimed at the Netherlands. This caused dissatisfaction in the Netherlands, and also triggered the further intensification of the currency war between Britain and capitalist countries. On January 27 and 28, 1876, the Group of 12, the Netherlands, Sweden, the United States, Denmark, Chile, Greece, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and the Kingdom of Siam, held secret negotiations in Melbourne, Australia, and reached an agreement to adjust the currency exchange rate. The currencies of the member countries of the Group of 12 established a new exchange rate relationship. On February 5, 1876, the central bank governors of the Group of 12 publicly announced in Melbourne that they supported the Dutch guilder to replace the British pound as the foreign exchange reserve currency among the currencies of various countries. The Dutch guilder officially became the first foreign currency outside the national currency. As soon as the news came out, the British pound depreciated instantly. Since the meeting was held in Melbourne and chaired by President Smithson, the Smithsonian Agreement. Half a year after the agreement was finalized, the United States announced the floating of the US dollar, and some other major capitalist countries also implemented currency floating one after another. The fixed currency exchange rate stipulated in this agreement was actually invalid. Therefore, in recent years, the Dutch guilder's status in the world has surpassed that of the British pound, becoming the world's true number one currency, although it is still far from the status of the US dollar in later generations. Chapter 872 Bismarck, the Dutch-British dispute, the law of the jungle prevails. Berlin, Germany. Recently, Kaiser Wilhelm I, Prime Minister Bismarck and Moltke the Elder have focused all their external energies on the global competition between Britain and the Netherlands. Bismarck said solemnly, "Behind the Dutch arsenal and the power of the Dutch leadership alliance, there has long been the Dutch economy, science and technology industry and military strength. Behind the power is the continuous innovation of the Netherlands. First, The Netherlands has a large number of arsenals in South America, and also has weapons manufacturing plants for the Kingdom of Siam. In Europe, in addition to the Netherlands' own territory, the Allies Sweden, Denmark, Greece and even Spain also have their own weapons manufacturing plants. The elder Moltke nodded and said, William IV said in 1871 when the capital was moved to Melbourne, Australia, we must become the great arsenal of the Dutch alliance. For us, this is a serious emergency as the war itself. We must perform our tasks with the same determination, the same sense of urgency, the same patriotism and spirit of sacrifice. 10 years later, the Netherlands has fulfilled the promise made by William IV and deployed weapons and military forces all over the world. It has even become an arsenal of democracy. At this time, Kaiser Wilhelm I of Germany said, the economic sanctions imposed by the Netherlands and the Allied powers on France during its colonization of the Kingdom of Siam have now been applied to Britain. Although the economic sanctions are not fatal, they are slowly causing huge losses to the British economy. The financial industry in London, England, which was previously the best in the world, has not been shaky in the past 3 years since it was sanctioned after the deterioration of the Netherlands and Britain in 1878. In the first few months of economic sanctions, Britain's imports declined and exports were even more halved. Although Britain transferred some products from these allies of the Netherlands to countries such as Argentina and the United States, and even Japan became a distribution center and market for Britain to transport industrial products, it was only 2/3 of the previous level, and the shrinkage was very serious. It would be extremely difficult to reach the previous level, William I said enviously. In 1880, Britain faced massive financial pressure just because of the deficit. The growth of Britain's industrial sector has entered an era of negative growth. Inflation has worsened for some product types, and real wages have fallen to 90%. These are all signs of economic sanctions against Britain. In the world, only the economic sanctions imposed by the Dutch Economic and Political Alliance can have a significant impact. Bismarck said, Your Majesty is right. The strong power of the Netherlands before us is also reflected in the voluntary participation of Dutch citizens. It is said that the Plastic Industry Commodity Association, which dominates the world in the Netherlands, has promised to build a factory with an investment of at least 10 million Dutch guilders, £400,000, in all the allies of the Netherlands around the world, recruiting local workers to participate in factory construction and manufacturing products. The three major weapons manufacturers, including the Dutch East India Group, the Far East Armed Group, and the Dutch United Group, are actively deploying armed sales networks and factory construction in the global allies of the Netherlands, actively working with the Dutch government to formulate foreign policies to deal with Britain, and selling more weapons to countries that are hostile to Britain. It is said that the Dutch Private Chamber of Commerce actively opposes Britain and uses channel information to reveal the list of British security agency personnel in various countries around the world. It is even said that the Dutch ambassadors in France, Germany, Russia and other countries often hold secret meetings with the ambassadors of the allied countries there to share the intelligence they have collected and compare notes. Some people joke that even Dutch restaurants in various countries have provided millions of meals to refugees from all over the world in order to maintain the reputation of the Netherlands. This has won the goodwill of the lower classes of various countries towards the Netherlands. Dutch universities recruit international students in various countries. Currently, there are more than 20,000 foreign students studying in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, which has greatly promoted the development of relations between the Netherlands and these countries. These international students more than a decade ago are now in their 30s and have become the backbone of their countries after returning home. As Bismarck reminded them, William I and Moltke the Elder frowned. Bismarck continued to say worriedly, in this way, the Netherlands will gain a lot of points in foreign diplomacy in the future with the help of these people's good impression of the Netherlands. Moreover, if the Netherlands has disputes with other countries at that time, these people will almost all support the Netherlands. Alice, at present, the Netherlands is the only one in the world that has such a powerful foreign policy to carry out such a large-scale binding foreign policy against other countries, and provide help that ordinary countries cannot provide. Bismarck said, secondly, the alliance led by the Netherlands is currently besieging Britain politically and economically. The Netherlands is currently the only country in the world that can launch such a large-scale united countries against other countries, and it is also the only country that dares to directly face the superpower of Britain and challenge it without changing its face. Since 1876, The Netherlands has challenged Britain by taking advantage of the sovereignty of the Strait of Malacca and made its attitude clear at the first time. Obviously, the Kingdom of the Netherlands is not playing around this time but is serious. The firm position of the Netherlands has united its allies to oppose Britain, and has become an important reason for Schenzigen's economic and political casualties to dare to take a step towards defeating Britain. The Netherlands led the alliance, and relied on the voluntary participation of its allies. The success of the alliance's power in suppressing the French Empire in the past proved to be an important means of sanctioned threats. This is why the Netherlands dares to use the power of the alliance to face Britain now. William I. It's a pity that when we agreed to the German Confederation, the method we used was too bloody, causing Austria to hastily form the Austro-Hungarian Empire with Hungary, while the neighboring Denmark and Sweden were taken by the Netherlands to form the Nordic Alliance. Alexander I of the Shah Empire was more vigilant against us. Even the Lion government in southern France, which we support, is more cautious against us, so our current foreign policy is still very difficult, a bit like being trapped in Central and Western Europe and struggling. He sighed. If we had a geographical location like France or Spain, we wouldn't be surrounded by enemies like we are now. Moltke the Elder, William IV should be grateful for the great gifts that Britain has given to the Netherlands over the years, showing the power of the Netherlands to the world. Britain has always advocated a policy of balancing the European continent by being isolated in the British Isles and opposed the establishment of a strong country on the European continent. Therefore, it has repeatedly intervened in the environment surrounding the European superpowers and established alliances with other superpowers. It used this mentality to defeat the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the Coachman of the Sea, Spain, the Overlord of the Sea, and the French Empire established by Napoleon. It even used the Crimean War to defeat the rising superpower, the Russian Empire. Bismarck, this fight between Britain and the Netherlands will prove who is the strongest superpower in the world. Perhaps, the world will enter a period of prevailing jungle law because of this. Chapter 873 The World's First Industrial Power. German Empire, Berlin. Bismarck said, since the outbreak of the North-South conflict in 1861, when Britain openly supported the Confederate States of America in the South, Britain has in fact distanced itself from other countries. The Netherlands took the opportunity to win over America, and then when we sold Schleswig and Holstein, they split and won over Sweden and Denmark. I found that the Netherlands took advantage of the situation step by step, weaving a network of allies in advance. The fight between Spain and Britain has been going on for 100 years because of the fight over Gibraltar, and the Netherlands will naturally not let it go. So some time ago, the Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives visited Spain and directly expressed his support for Spain's conquest of Gibraltar, winning the favor of the Spanish people. After the White War between Britain and the Netherlands, the sanctions imposed by the alliance led by the Netherlands on Britain have the advantage of Holland's global leadership, friendship, and display window. Even the speech of King William IV of the Netherlands in Melbourne in October 1879 has become a famous saying, "A country that is boycotted is a country that is about to surrender." Using this economic, peaceful, silent, and deadly remedy, there is no need for force. This is a terrible remedy. Bismarck's words silenced the two people present. Kaiser Wilhelm I, Dutch diplomacy has always continued William IV's idea of sanctions, using them only as a diplomatic tool. In the 18 years since France invaded the Kingdom of Siam in 1864, the Netherlands has imposed economic sanctions 11 times. Whenever tensions intensify, sanctions have become the favorite of Dutch diplomacy. However, this has also caused dissatisfaction among major powers. Many major powers are afraid of the power that the Netherlands has, so there are many more criticisms. Bismarck nodded and said, "The Netherlands' judgment on foreign sanctions and the right and wrong standards for discussing sanctions are values. Therefore, it can be said that it was justifiable that the French Empire invaded the Kingdom of Siam and incurred sanctions. This is a just act of justice." I remember that William IV of the Netherlands said in Amsterdam at that time that our support for the Kingdom of Siam will not waver, the Dutch allies will not split, and we will not get tired of supporting the Kingdom of Siam. In the end, the perseverance of the Netherlands and its allies finally made France collapse. Old Moltke said, "The Dutch aid to the Kingdom of Siam is 5% of the Dutch Ministry of Defense budget." This 5% destroyed the French army in the Far East and the reputation of the French Empire. The French Empire even became an outcast in the East and became a ridicule in Europe and the United States. William I nodded and sighed. I have to say that the Netherlands is very good at this trick. Think about it, it was because the Netherlands pulled us, Germany and France, to support the Boers in South Africa. In the end, Britain was defeated and lost more than 50,000 people. The arrogant Britain suddenly became a laughingstock. The Netherlands incorporated the Dutch, who accounted for 90% of the Boers in South Africa, which immediately greatly increased the military strength of the Dutch. It also laid the foundation for Britain to fear the Netherlands, and the Netherlands got peace for the next 10 years. Bismarck shook his head. Although Britain did not dare to take action, it finally instigated Louis I of Portugal to go to war with the Netherlands in Congo in Africa. Unfortunately, the Netherlands was already in a big situation and Portugal was defeated. From then on, the Netherlands soared. Old Moltke, yes, after that, the Dutch economy, military and momentum have greatly increased. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something, his face changed. Your Majesty, Prime Minister, now the Netherlands and Britain are fighting each other to the death. We have already obtained a lot of territory from the Austro-Hungarian Empire in Africa, but now we still find it difficult to open up the situation. On the issue of South America, Britain now supports Argentina. We have a good relationship with Paraguay and Uruguay, especially the latter. Now we have begun to station 1,000 troops there. However, the Netherlands has more than 20,000 troops stationed in its South American allies, not to mention the troops of the other 5 major allies. Do we need to change our idea of taking advantage of the war between Britain and the Netherlands in Asia to expand our territory in South America? William I heard this and said worriedly, our original plan was to join forces with the United States to take advantage of the Netherlands, but now Britain and the Netherlands have not fought again. The United States originally wanted to break away from the shackles of the Netherlands, but the Dutch capital in the United States is huge. The last time the Dutch capital almost rioted and left the United States, it scared the officials and congressmen in Washington. Even ordinary people were more frightened by this. In the end, President Stephen Douglas had to make changes to ease the relationship between the legendary Dutch capital and the Kingdom of the Netherlands before the situation was calmed down. So if we ask America to join us in poaching from the Netherlands, I think those people in Washington, who have become frightened birds, will not support it. As the Chief of Staff of the German Empire, Moltke the Elder naturally understood that the concerns expressed by William I were not wrong at all. However, Bismarck seemed to disagree and said, recently, the Republican Party has begun to warm up radically for the election in December at the end of the year. Although the Dutch have traditionally been more powerful within the Republican Party, times are different now. The strength of the Dutch has aroused dissatisfaction from other ethnic groups, and our Germans are the most dissatisfied. Therefore, they have begun to privately unite with other ethnic groups such as the British and French. It is very likely that the next president will no longer be of Dutch descent. In other words, next year, America is likely to lose the general election. Then, it will be our chance, Melbourne, Australia. If the Dutch industrial strength wants to surpass that of Britain, it will be difficult because it requires continuous innovation. In the past, America was an innovation from 0 to 1. And the motherland could make 1 the ultimate, which was the one step between America and the motherland at that time. This key step determined the outcome between the motherland and America, and also reflected the institutional differences between different countries. On the surface, China has more research results in artificial intelligence than the United States, but its innovation is not 0, but improvement on the 0 of the United States, so this is why China is not as strong as the United States. Similarly, since the Netherlands produced plastics in 1860 and developed a global industrial chain, it has suddenly become second only to the textile industry of the United Kingdom. Even the electrical industry of the Netherlands is better than the steam industry of the United Kingdom. The Netherlands is better in basic research in parts such as machine tools, etc., and the Netherlands' rise in world-leading automobile industry have made it difficult for the United Kingdom to catch up with the industrial strength of the Netherlands, and establish the Netherlands' position as the world's first industrial country. The possibility of the United Kingdom catching up with or even catching up with the Netherlands is very low. Chapter 874, What places does the Netherlands rule? British Empire, London. Queen Victoria is on the throne, and next to her are her eldest son, Prince Edward, and her second daughter, Princess Alice. Prince Edward was born in 1841 and is just 40 years old this year. Princess Alice, the second daughter, was born in 1843 and is 38 years old, which is the most attractive period for women. One is the future successor to the King of Britain, and the other is Queen Victoria's private state secretary. They can be said to be the most important members of the British royal family. What the three mothers and sons are talking about is the dangerous international situation that Britain is currently facing. Prince Edward said with a smug look on his face, "Mother, the Netherlands is increasingly not taking England seriously. This time, you made a move in Greece, and I think William IV must be very angry." Although many years have passed, if Prince Edward wants to say who he hates the most in Europe, it must be King William IV of the Netherlands. Every time he sees how stunning the current Queen Alexandra of the Netherlands is reported in the newspaper, and how she manages the International Women's Organization with dedication and responsibility, and how she has received praise from all over the world, he feels jealous. If it weren't for that guy William IV who stole Alexandra to be the Queen of the Netherlands, she would have been his. She would have been the Crown Princess of the United Kingdom long ago. The more he thought about it, the more angrily he said, "Mother, I think we can actually conduct more exercises in the southern Indian Ocean, so that the Netherlands will know the pain of our British Isles being besieged." Queen Victoria said calmly but sharply, "Now Britain is conducting exercises in the coastal areas of Greece, with the support of Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire and the Kingdom of Bulgaria, but it has been changed to the Indian Ocean. My son, how many of these countries or other countries do you think dare to show off their power with us in the waters off the Australian continent of the Netherlands? What's more, our exercises in the eastern Mediterranean have just ended. How do you know that the Netherlands has not retaliated against it?" Queen Victoria said in an educational tone, "My child, you will be the helmsman of Britain in the future, but the helmsman needs a global perspective. Now it seems that you are still a little short. In this regard, William IV is 1 year older than you, but he is a leader. You still need to work hard." Crown Prince Edward did not dare to refute when he heard this, but he clenched his hands tightly, but he exerted his strength, and his roots were all blue. At this moment, Princess Alice inserted herself. Princess Alice said, "I remember that the main content of the Smithsonian Agreement was to raise the official price of gold from 35 to 40 Dutch guilders per ounce, and the Dutch guilder depreciated by more than 10%. The currencies of the Netherlands allies appreciated to varying degrees against the Dutch guilder, and the fluctuation range of the exchange rates of various countries' currencies against the UK expanded from 1% up and down to 2.25, but the basic spirit of the agreement was still to maintain the Bretton Woods system. This greatly maintained the Netherlands' currency status in the circle of allies. Second, the currencies of other countries, except for Spain, which continued to float, most of them appreciated to varying degrees. Third, an institution called the International Monetary Fund was established in Sydney to stipulate that the upper and lower limits of the exchange rate would be expanded by 1% minus 2.25% from the upper and lower limits of the evaluation, with a total fluctuation range of 4.5%. Fourth, in order to win over these countries to support the Netherlands' monetary dominance, the Netherlands began to cancel import surcharges and investment taxes. Queen Victoria said solemnly, "Now the power of the Dutch international currency is growing." The status of the pound was established after the victory of the 4 Anglo-Dutch naval battles. London, England replaced Amsterdam, the Netherlands, as the European capital base. Now Sydney and Amsterdam are launched in parallel to seize London's financial status. The increase in monetary power has established the international strong currency status of the Dutch guilder. The Netherlands' world-leading international trade has helped the Dutch guilder to increase its international trading volume and quality. In addition, Britain was unknowingly isolated by the Netherlands. Many industrial products of Britain and the Netherlands allies were replaced by the Netherlands. At the same time, the Netherlands completely abolished Britain's position as a Dutch ally in the arms dealers. Let these countries fully turn to the Netherlands in the Anglo-Dutch dispute. She said unhappily, "At present, the Dutch guilder has become the currency trading object of various countries, and the gold and silver of various countries have been pulled to the Australian continent by trucks and ships. The Netherlands used paper money to obtain the world's gold and silver, but our pound has gradually become an object abandoned by various countries. Perhaps many years later, our pound can only be used in the British Isles and British colonies and territories." When Prince Edward heard this, he was surprised, and then he was a little flustered. If what Mother said is true, then the status of the Netherlands will be higher and our British Empire will sink. Edward and Princess Alice had the best relationship among Queen Victoria's children, so when Alice saw Edward's unhappy expression, she immediately had an idea. Princess Alice said, "Edward, I don't think we need to be so pessimistic. As the saying goes, good fortune and bad fortune go hand in hand. Now it seems that we in Britain are at a disadvantage, but in fact, isn't this our opportunity? Crown Prince Edward looked at Princess Alice in confusion. You are worthy of my love for you. Alice, please tell me what you think. Not surprisingly, Queen Victoria next to her just looked at her calmly, as if she had expected this. Queen Victoria looked at Princess Alice and couldn't help but think of her fourth daughter, Princess Louise, who is married to the Kingdom of Greece. If Louise were here, maybe that girl would be more determined and could understand my mind better. Unfortunately, her ambition is too big. If she stays in London, I'm afraid Edward won't be able to control her after I die. Princess Alice said, currently, the Netherlands has a majority of natives in 8 provinces, including Western Australia, Northern Australia, New Guinea and Maluku Islands, Hawaiian Islands, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda and Uganda, and Zambia. The territory has been increased in the north of Zimbabwe and Malawi. Whites are dominant in 12 provinces, including the Dutch East Indies, William Province, Victoria, New Wales, South Australia, Queensland, New Guinea and Maluku Islands, Tasmania, South Pacific Islands, Capital Fiji Island, Madagascar, North Mozambique, and Congo. The provinces of Guyana in South America, the United Arab Emirates in the Middle East, and the Alaska Peninsula in North America are directly under the jurisdiction of the royal family of William IV. They are considered private territories, just like Australia, Canada, and New Zealand in the previous life. Chapter 875, The Hesitant German Republican Candidate. United States of America. The presidential election in December 1881 had already started in early February. At the Republican Party headquarters, presidential-elect James Garfield and vice presidential candidate Chester Arthur had solemn expressions on their faces. In front of them was James Gillespie Bryan, a German-American who had served as a member of the Maine Congress and Senate for 20 years. If that were the case, it would not be worth Garfield and Chester Arthur's attention. Because Bryan had another important identity. He was the Speaker of the House of Representatives of the United States of America from 1869 to 1873. He was the 4th person in the American political arena. This was why Bryan was favored by the two. At the same time, Bryan also showed enough respect for the two people in front of him. Chester was not to be mentioned. He was a New York City councilman, the director of the New York State Ordnance Bureau during the Civil War, and the director of the New York Port Customs. He also owned a law firm on Wall Street in New York. He had a wide network of contacts. As for Garfield, Bryan and him were old friends, but the other party also had something that he valued. James Garfield was elected as a senator from Ohio as a Republican in 1859 and served for 2 years. During this period, he became an ally of President Lincoln. He also supported the use of coercive means to force those southern states that had withdrawn from the Union to return to the Union. During this period, he took time to study law and was absorbed as a member of the Bar Association. Bryan knew that Garfield met Chester, the owner of a well-known law firm in New York, at this time. In November 1863, Garfield was elected as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. In December of the same year, he accepted President Lincoln's advice, resigned from the military, and became a full-time member of the U.S. House of Representatives. Until 1880, he was re-elected to the House of Representatives for 9 consecutive times, which lasted a total of 18 years. During this period, his talents were fully utilized, and he finally became one of the leaders of the Republican Party in the U.S. House of Representatives, and served as the chairman of the Military Committee, the Banking Committee, and the Appropriations Committee. Moreover, when Garfield was a congressman, he was in charge of the National Census Committee. He made constructive suggestions on the population census work, which had a great impact on the future census policies of the United States and the world. He was hailed as the father of the modern census. This guy was knowledgeable and good at speaking and writing. He could look at problems from a national perspective and was good at combining ideals with reality. Because of this, he was recognized by Lincoln and became one of the main figures of the Republican Party, which was in power in the United States for the first time in 1860. Facing such an awe-inspiring person, although James Blaine served as Speaker of the House of Representatives, he still put the other party on an equal footing. What's more, now he has come to the Republican Garfield campaign headquarters as an invited member and has become an important member of Garfield's presidential campaign. Chester, currently, Stephen Douglas of the Democratic Party is seeking re-election as president. However, the last time he united with the German Empire, he started to check the influence of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in the United States, but in the end he stirred up a hornet's nest. The Dutch were angry and wanted to transfer assets on a large scale and close factories, which scared ordinary citizens throughout the United States. The Democratic Party has even triggered a huge backlash from the Dutch. He looked up at Garfield and said, "Now Britain and the Netherlands are competing for influence on the sea, but our two parties in the country are fighting to the death because of the Netherlands and Britain. It's really strange." Brian, Mr. Garfield, I think all elections need a certain topic. The main reason why President Lincoln succeeded in the election in 1859 was that he won the support of black people. He used sympathy to earn votes from black people. His Irish identity is also sympathized by people. Of course, his efforts and anger are also inseparable. So this time we use the Dutch's dissatisfaction with the Democratic Stephen Douglas government to win over the Dutch to support the Republican Party, which will be a great weapon. Chester said at this time, "But Mr. Brian, the German Empire is currently wavering. If we rashly win over the Dutch, will Berlin be unhappy?" Chester is a fourth-generation British American. He is of British descent, just like Thomas, the current Secretary of State of the Republican and Democratic Party. It's funny to say that both of them are of British descent, but Chester is very unimpressed by Britain, because his grandfather and father died on the battlefield of conquering the 13 southern states with the support of Britain during the Civil War. So he hates Britain very much. Thomas, on the contrary, has a close relationship with the Morgan Consortium, the largest consortium in the United Kingdom. It is said that he has connections with the British royal family. So the two people have opposite positions, which is an open matter in American politics. Garfield and Brian were silent immediately. Among the 32 million people in the Northern American Federation, there are more than 8 million people of German descent, the entire German Confederation after consent, accounting for a quarter of the American population. With the rise of the German Empire in recent years, Germans began to hold their heads high in America. Even people from other kingdoms who were angry because Prussia unified the entire German Confederation by force would occasionally borrow the name of the German Empire to protect their own interests. So from 1866 to now, in the 15 years, the mentality of Germans has changed. Germans have become a unified term. Garfield and Brian knew this very well, and they also understood Chester's concerns. Some time ago, Berlin isolated Stephen Douglas' government from the control of the Netherlands because of Germany's solicitation. Now, if they, as Germans, did something contrary to Berlin's interests, it was conceivable that Bismarck and William I in Berlin would definitely have opinions. Thinking of this, the two of them couldn't help but smile bitterly. Finally, Garfield said, "The German Empire currently chooses to be tolerant, so it will not easily offend Britain and the Netherlands. On the contrary, in order to expand the influence of Germans in America, we have made some compromises with the Dutch. In fact, it is not a retreat to advance. Alice, it must be said that the Dutch have a huge influence in the American financial world. The first consortium in the United States is the Randy family, which is of Dutch descent and the chief minion of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in the United States. The second consortium, the Citibank Consortium, and the third consortium, the Boston Consortium, are also of Dutch descent. This has put pressure on other consortiums. The fourth consortium is the British Morgan Consortium. The fifth consortium, the Rockefeller Consortium, is of German descent. The sixth French consortium is the DuPont Consortium. Britain has also accelerated its development in America in recent years and supported the rapid rise of the Mellon family. Brian said, "So Mr. Garfield chose not to offend the Dutch and the Kingdom of the Netherlands behind them." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.